Chapter 702. After Huaisher wiped away his tears in the wind and rain, he realized that at least he still had a dream, and his mood calmed down a little. Tongji then continued unhurriedly, "Actually, I think this matter can be considered." "What is it?" "Of course it's about what Miyamoto said." Tangi said, "Although it's a little tricky, isn't it pretty good?" "How is it good?" "It's good that you don't neglect your work and private matters." Tangi flapped her wings and reminded him, "Have you forgotten the most important prerequisite of Great Seeming's transformation ritual? This is an opportunity that has come knocking on your door. If you don't seize it, you can only go to the border or wait until the end of the year." Huaisher was stunned for a moment, and then he understood. The ritual that Tangi had specially designed for him. Within 3 levels, a young Seeming would transform into a great Seeming. What was necessary was the strengthening of divinity, a vessel that could replace Huaisher and bear the burden of hell's erosion, which was the divine mark called Motoko, and a large number of deaths. Great Seeming, who ruled over death, could only be born from a large number of deaths, from a ghost to a young Seeming, from death to life, then from a young Seeming to a great Seeming, from life to death. The beginning and the end intertwined, forming an inner circle like a Mobius loop. A large number of people died, and a large number of consciousnesses dissipated. To be precise, death would begin to happen frequently and in large numbers in a short period of time. Moreover, it would be best if it had something to do with Huaisher. The most convenient way was undoubtedly to start a massacre. Huaisher froze on the spot, in disbelief. "You want me to kill those innocent people with the characteristics of a beast? Hey, you're heartless. Huaisher, what are you thinking in that head of yours?" Tangi also stared at him in disbelief. "Silly boy, humans can't. At least they shouldn't. Aren't you the one who started this?" Huaisher raised his guard. "What are you thinking?" Tangi sighed helplessly. She raised her little wings and wrapped them around Huaisher's neck. She leaned over and asked, "Use your brain. In the whole world, other than our good friend the rancher, is there any other charity organization that would be as generous as Green Day? How could there be someone as easy to kill as Green Sun? No more, right? You're Green Sun's nemesis. Huaisher. You're the official fighter of the Directorate of Defense, the future of Asia. Don't you feel embarrassed if you don't show off your traditional skills?" Huaisher was stunned for a long time. He felt that what she said made sense. In any case, he didn't have a good impression of the people who started the riot. If he had to say something, he wouldn't have any qualms killing those bastards like the future of God City, who pushed their entire race to the edge of a cliff for revenge. However, what made him suspicious was something else. "Is that all?" "What else?" Tongji rolled her eyes. "In the past, you didn't even hesitate to give that damn Baldy his hair tonic. This is a life and death grudge. Why are you so scared now that I've asked you to do something to your subordinates?" Huaisher rubbed his chin. He suddenly had a bad feeling. "I don't think it's that simple." Then it didn't take long for this matter to become more complicated. To be precise, Huaisher sensed that something was wrong the next morning. He arrived at the address given by Ai Ching early in the morning. It was a high-end apartment. When he took the private elevator upstairs, he found that the entire first floor had been transformed into a temporary command center. In the bustling commercial district of the capital, no one noticed that the Directorate of Defense had quietly hammered a nail into their coffin. As soon as Huaisher entered the door, he was pushed into the changing room. All his clothes were taken off, and he was only in his underwear. A few old men and women walked around him a few times to check him out. The few of them exchanged a few words in professional terms in a low voice before returning to their respective posts. Then, like a dead pig on the assembly line in a canning factory, it was plucked, marinated, fried, and stuffed into a can. Huaishur was put into all kinds of machines for examination: blood tests, CT scans, and MRI scans. After the whole set, all the doctors began to wonder how he had survived until now. According to the analysis of other doctors, 70% of his bones have been broken before. Some have even been broken more than 3 times. He has suffered more than a dozen deep corrosion, and there are signs of being cursed. The number of times is quite shocking. Also, most importantly, we should lock up this nuclear bomb before the hybrid turns into a biological weapon. The doctor in charge of the examination stood beside the printer. He took out a steady stream of new papers and piled them in front of AI Ching. The pile of records was almost 8 or 9 centimeters high, and it was still increasing. It was a list of viruses and toxins in Huaishur's body. It was like a Chinese New Year in hell, and a strange demon went on stage to perform dish name for everyone. If he wasn't a member of the Astronomical Association, the local department would have sounded the alarm just by taking 2 steps in the present world. Sending such a genius to solve the biohazard crisis was like throwing incendiary bombs at the scene of a fire. As long as I burn them all first, they won't be able to burn anymore. So, he doubted from the bottom of his heart. Was this guy really reliable? Don't worry, everything will continue. Huaishur's safety is guaranteed by the decision-making room and the ivory tower. You can state the truth in the report, and I'll sign it. AI Ching casually glanced at the list of viruses that was still coming out of the printer. She waved at Huaishur and pointed to the chair-shaped operating table beside her. She motioned for him to lie down. Huaishur felt like there were 100,000 children in his mind. They all had a lot of question marks, but he didn't know which one to ask first. Lying on the operating table, he turned his head and saw the open organ preservation box and the 2 bone horns that were the length of the knuckle of the little finger inside. What is this? A prop for disguise. It has inherited the bone conduction communication function, GPS, and a bunch of other stuff. Next, it will be attached to your skull through surgery. Don't worry, it won't be disfigured. Before Huaishur could ask what was the purpose of the sticker, he noticed another person standing next to the surgeon. His eyes widened in disbelief. Who the F***CK is that? Tony. AI Ching looked back at the man in the horse-face mask. Isn't he your old acquaintance? You should have met before, right? Tony waved at Huaishur happily. Then why is he holding a pair of scissors? Because he wants to cut your hair and redesign your new image. With the sound of the scissors opening and closing, AI Ching handed over a stack of documents. The process will take about 3 hours. Take this. You can take a look at it in the middle. What's this? Huaishur felt that he was already stupid. He didn't want to ask anything. He just wanted to open his mouth and drool. And then, in the next period of time, you need to remember and memorize your identity information. Even if you talk in your sleep, you can't reveal it. AI Ching said, as an action member and registered military officer of the Astronomy Association, now we need you to find an opportunity to infiltrate Green Sun and look for clues. Wait. Huaishur finally reacted. Isn't that being a traitor? If possible, I hope you can use the word undercover. What's the difference? Of course, traitor or traitor is usually used to describe a rebel in a team. But you have already rebelled before you even joined the team. Look, isn't this not even close to being a traitor? Are you serious? No, I'm afraid you'll be too nervous, so I'm just joking. AI Ching lowered her head and looked down at him with a calm face that had never changed. She asked softly, "Do you feel much more relaxed?" "Yes, it's too easy for me." Huaishur nodded frantically, afraid that something bad would happen to him if he was late. Then, his head was pressed down by Tony again. He was designing a hairstyle. This type of customer is really difficult to deal with. It seems that any style is very suitable. Tony's hand was rubbing the big scissors. He looked up and asked, "What kind of feeling do you want?" "My stomach hasn't been feeling well recently. It's best if you can cut it to the extent that I can't recognize it. As for the image, a spy doesn't have to pay attention to any image. Be more rustic and don't attract too much attention. Let's not talk about why you want to cut my hair because of your stomach, but why do these big scissors always aim at my face and want to cut it?" Huaishur was so scared that his face turned green. Therefore, it was good to have a higher level of fantasy in the world. A frost giant stylist cutting young Master Ming's hair. No one would dare to write this on Zhongjian Web. AI Qing was like a dragon that had been prepared long ago. She was just waiting for him to take the bait, and then quickly started the process. She couldn't wait for him to enter the rhythm of green sun tonight. "Is there a need to be so anxious?" Huaishur asked. "Isn't this too fast?" "Yes, it has to be fast. After all, time waits for no man. Guess how much time that old man Miyamoto has wasted by deliberately hiding it from us." AI Qing was admiring the way Huaishur cut her hair. She lit a cigarette and said, "It's too late now. There's no time for us to use the usual methods to slowly investigate. We have to take the risk." Huaishur sighed, faintly. "I'm that soldier, right?" He actually wanted to say that it was easy for her to not find a boyfriend if she went on like this, but he didn't dare. The premonition of death was beating wildly, reminding him not to court death. Feeling Huaishur's resentful gaze, AI Qing gave a rare explanation. "Don't worry, it's not just you. Even within the Central Bureau, we are just an independent investigation team. There are many people who don't want this turmoil to happen. Besides you, there are more people active in the Kyoto area now, hoping to contain this disaster." She paused and shrugged slightly. "It's just that everyone may not get along well with each other." Huaishur understood what she meant. Everyone was competitors. Even if they were in different departments of the same company, there was still performance competition. The legal department wasn't human, the business department didn't do anything, and the human resources and finance department were riding on their necks. Didn't the business have to continue? He just hoped that, when the time came, there wouldn't be something unpleasant for everyone. Huaishur sighed, looked at the information in his hand, and began to get into character. 2 hours later, he raised his head and looked at himself in the mirror. Chapter 703. He was completely unrecognizable. Not only did his hairstyle change, but his temperament and even his sacred mark also changed. After implanting the characteristics of hybrids through minimally invasive surgery, his hair was reshaped by the abyss stylist with scissors. It became short hair, but the lengthened bangs highlighted a bit of gloominess and dullness. His naked back was painted with a brand new work by a hellish artist using a special paint. It was as if a hideous old monk was carrying a heavy bronze bell in a wriggling darkness in a dilapidated temple where a will-o'-the-wisp rose. But after looking at it for a long time, one could vaguely see the outline of a strange and cold door. Ingzhou's second level of genealogy, Nod-era Square. The main characteristics are ghost fire, erosion, and intimidation of the aura of death. It is one of the lower sacred marks of Rashomon. If you go further up, you will be Ibaraki boy. Its characteristics and areas of expertise are exactly the same as yours. Remember not to expose yourself. AI Ching's finger swiped across the screen of her phone twice. The small horn that had been implanted into Weischer's skull trembled slightly. The mechanism within it activated on its own, suppressing Weischer's origin substance fluctuations to the level of a second-tier origin substance. Weischer thought for a moment and asked, shouldn't the wood demon be more suitable? The wood demon's combat power is too weak. Although it is harmless, it is not suitable for you to raise your status in a short time. Your purpose is to enter the underworld of the Donbwa inner circle and work hard to climb up. Recently, the underworld is very chaotic, and it is more convenient for you to make contributions. Anyway, the extreme Dao nowadays are a bunch of scumbags who deserve to die. You can do whatever you want. Weischer couldn't help but want to clap after hearing this. This wave of President AI was too detailed. Not only his background and the sacred mark, but also his promotion and salary and the way to reach the peak of extreme Dao. Then, is there anything else I need to do next? He asked. Before the mission begins, give yourself a name. It is an undercover mission anyway. I hope you don't mess around. If your name is too weird, you won't pass. Don't worry, I like this part the most. Weischer took the form and beamed with joy. She pondered for a moment before writing the last stroke on the brand new resume with a flourish of her pen. A plain person? AI Ching frowned. She sensed that something was wrong. Where have I seen it before? Yeah, I think I've heard of it somewhere before. I just took it and changed it. Hopefully, I won't offend anyone. Weischer nodded seriously, not worried at all about exposing himself. The moment the miraculous carving was completed, the shrinking of the phenomenon had already ended. The records on the white paper began to thin rapidly until only an outline was left. Even the participants would only remember that there was such a thing and such a person. However, most of the things would be diluted and eliminated. There was no need to worry about the possibility of being exposed. To put it simply, his dark history of cross-dressing had been erased, unless some super large organization had nothing better to do and invested a lot of manpower and resources to search for everything on the paper. It would be possible to piece together some information by tracing the type of miracle engraving. But what does this have to do with me? Why, sure. Since the meal had already been prepared, why would he still need to worry about the problem of losing his horse? After another 30 minutes, all the details were arranged, and the fresh and hot mixed-race youth, strongman Weischer, was born. According to the information, Matsumoto Ozeki, who was his master, had cooperated with the Central Bureau decades ago, and Tanaka, who introduced him to the industry, was a secret informant of the Central Bureau. Otherwise, how could he have lived until he retired? Even if it didn't interfere in the internal affairs of the modern realm, as a huge organization that maintained the operation of the modern realm, the influence of the Astronomical Association was still pervasive and omnipresent. When a power passed through layers of approval and was limited to use, the influence was still huge and far-reaching. Just like now, a person called Weischer had appeared out of thin air in the modern realm. From the delivery records to the elementary school classmates to the same year in the dojo, everything was prepared. The whole process didn't even take 5 minutes. More than 26 minutes were spent waiting for approval and approval. By the time Weischer bought the beginner's sumo book in the subway, he had already changed from a teacher in the ivory tower to a mixed-race youth who was in urgent need of money and had no other choice but to turn to the extreme path. Now, what he was most concerned about was another matter. If we can't do it, what will happen in the end? This was the last question Weischer asked before leaving. If I mess up and don't succeed in the end, will the Astronomical Association take further measures? Out of a sense of identification with the Astronomical Association, Huaishur was very respectful and didn't say anything that everyone understood. But Ai Qing still understood what he wanted to ask. There's no need to worry about the Astronomical Association cleaning up the inner circle of Danhua. The black letter also has a limit. Huaishur, the Central Bureau isn't crazy enough to kill all the beast characteristics because of an uncontrollable biological law. Ai Qing said, but that's not necessarily the case in other places. You know, it's not the Astronomical Association that's anxious that these mixed-race people don't die early enough. This is the internal problem of this country. Do you understand? In accordance with the first act of the P5 and the Astronomical Association, the Astronomical Association can't interfere in the internal affairs of any sovereign country in the modern realm, especially when there are still two sovereigns in this country. She rubbed her forehead with a headache and sighed gloomily. We have to solve this matter before they make a move, in case their general or emperor accidentally remembers that there's a group of mixed-race people under their feet. What? They still want to riot? Great, let's go slaughter them. This was what Miyamoto Genichiro was most afraid of. He wasn't afraid of the Astronomical Association. The Astronomical Association cared about their reputation, or rather, they had to care about their reputation. Otherwise, once they were degraded or stained with some heinous stain, they would lose their noble position. This was the foundation of the existence of this organization. No matter how big the matter was, they would definitely solve it with iron heads. But other people were different. Other people wouldn't care. Compared to many powerful forces, the power of mixed-race people was too small. Even if they rioted, there was absolutely no possibility of success. Even Green Sun should be aware of this, and they were just using them as cannon fodder to achieve their goal. After a carnival, all of them were smashed to pieces. A general's success was built on the bones of thousands of people, and only a few of them were successful. Those people. Huaishur wanted to say something, but stopped. I mean, those with beast characteristics, why would they be so stupid? Ai Qing sneered and said what Huaishur wanted to say. Why would they be willing to be used by others? Don't think too much. Huaishur, they're just not smart enough. She said, if people can't let go of hatred, they can't learn to think. If they can't take revenge, they can't get justice. Thinking and fairness, they have neither of these. Why should they be rational? She lowered her head and flipped through the file in her hand. Looking at the summarized information on it, she said indifferently, some people really think that this will be the solution, and some people are very clear-headed. It's just that they have nothing, so they want others to be like them. At this time, the really smart people should fish in troubled waters and gain the greatest benefits for themselves. Guess how happy the Seven Stars Group is now. The smugglers of the Russian Federation have recently opened up all the routes transporting day and night, whose orders are they to satisfy. Everyone will have other illegal sects are eager to participate. A reckless explosion in this burst out. Ai Qing raised her hand spread and made an explosion gesture. He finally woke up from his dream and looked at the unfamiliar ceiling in front of him with sweat dripping down his back. Mold spread between the pornographic posters left by the previous resident. Huaishur Jin, wake up. When he turned his head, he saw half of a face sticking out from under the bed, staring at him. It urged him unhappily. Mr. Fujimoto is looking for you. Hurry up, don't let Big Brother wait too long. Green Sun's reply finally came. Huaishur's spirit was lifted. He hurriedly got up and followed the person to Fujimoto Commercial without washing his face. Passing through the narrow alley, there were messy scenes on both sides. Under the faint light of the red light, he could see a few women smoking behind the window and waving at him. The dim light could not hide the spots at the corners of their eyes. Their empty pupils were stained with pink, and nothing could be seen. His footsteps paused involuntarily, but he was pushed by the person behind him. Okay, you're still thinking about women at this time. When you're rich, you can find as beautiful as you want. Hurry up, don't let the customers wait. The messenger impatiently urged him to continue moving forward. In a quick glance, he seemed to see a back figure holding a photo and talking to a prostitute. The woman impatiently urged him to go somewhere else and not hinder her business. But he must have seen that back figure somewhere. It was like déjà vu. But it was definitely not an important role, because Huaishur had no impression of it at all. This strange illusion was quickly thrown to the back of his mind. He arrived at the place. Strangely, it was not Fujimoto Commercial's office, but the back alley downstairs. It was an extended van with an advertisement for Fujimoto Photography and a picture of a big-breasted young lady on it. Fujimoto poked his head out from the driver's seat and smiled. "Why, Shiki-kun, you're finally here. Have you eaten dinner?" "Not yet." Huaishur shook his head. "To be honest, I'm starving. Are we going out? Can you let me have a meal first? There'll be time for you to eat on the way. Get in the car first." Fujimoto raised his hand and pointed to the car behind him. "Someone is waiting for you. You'd better hurry up." Huaishur turned his head and sensed the fierce aura in the car. There were two ascendants inside. He could vaguely feel the hostility. Through the window covered with sunscreen, he could not see the specific information in the car with his eyesight. But even if he thought with his feet, he knew that someone who could make Fujimoto, the boss of Extreme Tao, be the driver was definitely not an ordinary person. The biggest possibility was Green Sunday. In other words, the people of Green Sun had finally arrived. Glancing at the signal unimpeded sign on his retina, Huaishur was suddenly fearless. He could call for justice and fire at any time. If worst came to worst, he could just kill this group of people after messing up. As long as the insiders were dead, no one would know that he had infiltrated. With this kind of confidence, he opened the car door and got into the darkness. Then, he was greeted with a cold question. "Name?" Chapter 704. You're here again, aren't you? Full of expectations, he walked into the carriage, hoping to have a battle of wits and courage with the people of Green Sun, but he was greeted with a name. Why didn't feel good. In the dim carriage, without turning on the lights, the two messengers of Green Sun seemed to be shrouded in a thick fog, and their faces were covered by wisps of darkness. He couldn't hear any specific characteristics.
It was
from the
helpless
voice,
against
only
many
a dull
problems
tone that couldn't be distinguished
or
between
were
a man
beyond the
and a
user's
woman.
scope.
Behind
The
the
third
black
type
fog,
was divination.
2 pairs of cold
Depending on
eyes
one's
stared
own
at the
level
mixed
and
race
authority.
boy. Since the
And
moment
whether
he
the
entered the
consumption was
carriage,
large or
an
small,
invisible force
the answer was
unfolded
often
and
ambiguous
enveloped him, and
Name.
unreliable.
The
However,
person in the lead
upper
repeated,
limit of this type of item was
froze for a
usually the
moment,
highest.
looked at them blankly,
as long
and
as one's
quickly
level was
answered,
high enough and was
"Kishimoto."
willing to invest
Age,
a large amount of
18.
resources into it, they would be
Birthplace,
willing to pay the
Yoshimi
price.
Ryasaka.
Then,
The border,
he would definitely be able to get the
Rinshin
answer
Hospital.
closest to the
To
truth.
his surprise,
Unfortunately,
every word that came out of
these
his
3
mouth would
methods
appear
were
with the
useless
turbulence of
against
the
the
air,
current, turning into a
Weisher.
fist-sized
The
metal
horn on his
entity
skull
suspended
directly
in the air.
integrated the
Between the two
interference and
sides,
deception of
the
questions
first
and
type of
answers
lie
were
detection
slowly
tool,
arranged,
perfectly
like a
ensuring
chat
that
box that
Weisher's
constantly
identity
grew
as the
and
paperman
turned.
would not be exposed.
Who is your father?
As for the second type of
Kishimoto.
retrieval, no
What
matter
about
how
your
awesome
mother?
it was,
Watanabe
it could only
Puruko.
retrieve the data
Next to
of
him,
the present.
the thinner
Everyone
messenger
knew
turned
that
a strange
things like
metal
searchers
ballpoint
were
pen in his
very
hand,
unreliable,
and suddenly
no matter what
interrupted to ask
keywords
an
you
unrelated
entered.
question.
The bureau
Are you
could
a
throw
virgin?
the advertisement to the first
Weisher
column
was
on
at
the
a
first
loss,
page,
froze in place,
and when it came
and
to the
looked at the
third
two
type,
people
the Book of
puzzled,
Destiny,
but the
was
two
simply
people didn't
too
respond.
happy, just
As
stared
long as
straight at
Weisher
him,
was willing,
waiting for his
he
answer,
could even make the
and then
person
asked
who
again,
divined him believe that he
"Kishimoto,
was
are
an
you a virgin?"
alpaca running carefree.
"I'm not."
On the
Weisher's
African savannah,
expression twitched,
spitting
but
saliva.
then he saw that the
But it
kanji
shouldn't
and
be
kanji
just
that came
that.
out from the
No
corner
matter
of his
how
mouth
careless he
suddenly
was,
vibrated
he shouldn't
in the
have
air
placed the
and
lie
turned
detection
blood red.
tool so
Lies.
blatantly in the open.
Weisher looked
In other
at
words,
the metal ballpoint
did he have
pen
other
in the
tricks up
messenger's
his
hand,
sleeve?
and
However,
instantly understood
the other
that
party
it was a
clearly
relic of the
didn't give
border
him any
specially
time to
used
think.
for lie
The
detection.
two of them took turns to ask
Unfortunately,
questions at
this set
lightning
of fake
speed,
identities was
asking about
useless
almost
against
all
the
the
Astronomy
big and small
Association.
things
In
of the
fact,
paperman's
there were
childhood.
only 3
From the beginning to
principles
the end,
in the
the
so-called
two of them
lie
stared
detection.
straight. The
At
simplest
Weisher.
and most
This made
straightforward
him feel
method
increasingly
was to conduct
uneasy,
a mental analysis
and he didn't know what kind of
verification on the
situation
person
he
being
had
stepped
tested.
into. Through
In
the
the
other party's
communication
mental
channel,
state, one
AI
would be able to
Ching
determine
had already
whether
told
or
him
not
to
the
be
other
prepared
party
to
was
take
lying.
action at any
However,
time.
its
no
weakness
one knew
was
that
that
it
it
could
could
be
be
easily
easily
hidden
countered by
behind the
techniques
smooth sailing
such as
situation.
hypnosis.
Until the
second
second
hour
type
of
was more
questioning
common.
gradually
This kind
came
of border
to an
relic
end.
would be connected
The
to
two
some
emissaries
strange
didn't
places
ask any
and
more
indescribable,
questions.
mysterious
Only Weisher
existences.
asked with an
Usually,
uneasy expression,
they were some
"My
souls
lords, did I
born from the
pass?"
hell projection of the Silver
Secretly,
Sea, under the
or some
thin
kind of
shell,
wonderful item.
the muscles
They
had
could
already
directly
begun to
search
move
the records
imperceptibly
and
contracting
verify their
and
authenticity.
relaxing.
Like a
However,
bow that
this
was
kind of
gradually
retrieval
gathering
tool
strength
was
ready to
often
launch a
limited by the
thunderous
user
attack
at any time. There were a total of 2 enemies, one on the left and one on the right, with a distance of 1 meter. At this distance, Weisher could instantly burst into a round of fierce attacks. If the other party had a defensive tool, he could use steps at the same time to forcibly overturn the moving vehicle. The moment he lost gravity, he could use the axe of wrath or the hammer of pain to break the defense, and then use the attributes of the other party's stigmata to choose a weapon to restrain them. In an instant, almost instinctively, countless battle plans flowed through Weisher's mind. But at that moment, the 2 emissaries nodded in satisfaction. The leader seemed to be very pleased and said, "Paperman, you didn't lie on many key issues. You have passed the assessment, and Green Sun is open to you. However, before you officially become a member of Green Sun, there are a few last questions that you need to answer." The other thin emissary raised the border relic in the shape of a ballpoint pen in his hand, and then pressed the pen cap. With a click, a crisp sound spread out. At that moment, Weisher found that he had lost control of his own body. Right in front of him, the words formed by the conversation between the 2 sides began to rapidly change, overlapping and combining. In the end, it actually formed the appearance and outline of the paperman, attached to Weisher's body. This piece of information from him actually formed a virtual soul, dominating his body. All the questions and answers had been to construct this virtual soul that replaced Huaishi's own body, constantly extracting origin substance. The metal ballpoint pen simulated the information of the paperman, turning it into its own puppet. If Huaishi really was the paperman, for the current him, this was just a layer of shackles. As long as he got rid of the paperman disguise, he could immediately attack. And at that moment, he heard AI Qing's urgent voice. "Don't move." All resistance disappeared without a trace. Huaishi gave up on resisting, allowing the paperman's virtual soul to take control of his body. "I'm very sorry for asking so many rude questions just now. Please don't worry, we won't do anything to you. We just hope that you can answer a few questions truthfully from the bottom of your heart." The emissary, who was twirling the metal ballpoint pen in his hand, spoke. After unblocking the barrier, he used a polite and gentle tone to apologize to Huaishi. But where had he heard this voice before? First question. The emissary tapped the ballpoint pen in his hand and asked, "Do you hate mixed-race people?" An invisible force dominated Huaishi's lips, tongue, and lungs, forcing him to say the answer from the bottom of his heart. "No." "Very good." The emissary's gaze seemed to soften slightly, and then he asked again, "Have you ever been discriminated against because of your identity, or even treated unfairly?" "Yes, that's right." Huaishi answered truthfully. Whether it was the paperman or Huaishi, they had all experienced pain, the emissary suddenly asked, and even malice. "Have you ever thought of taking revenge on this world because of this, killing all those who persecuted you, and making those who despise you pay the price?" In the silence, Huaishi gritted his teeth, trying to cater to the other party's wishes, but no matter what, he couldn't lie. In the end, he sighed tiredly. "No," he said, "that kind of thought I have never had." In an instant, silence fell. The two emissaries from Green Sun looked at each other in shock, as if it was the first time they heard such a strange answer. They couldn't believe it, but immediately the way they looked at Huaishi became subtle, blocked by the thick fog. They couldn't see clearly, but there was no doubt that the other party's expression became serious and serious. "It's over." Huaishi closed his eyes, sighed, and prepared to take action. But soon, he heard the thin emissary raise his hand and applaud with admiration and praise. "Don't feel inferior and uneasy because of this, Mr. Paperman. Such a righteous and kind character. You should feel proud." The emissary solemnly said, "Even an unjust person like me whose hands are stained with blood must express admiration for such a noble will. Pure gentleman. Only someone who knows how to restrain hatred will know how to love their own people. Only someone who knows how to pity will understand the weight of suffering. I believe that the Grand Commander will also be happy because of your arrival." "What the hell?" Huaishi raised his eyes in shock and looked at the other side. Sensing the joy from the other party's heart, he was even more confused. How could a sociopathic organization like Green Sun welcome a kind person like me? Shouldn't the more violent, evil, and sociopathic the better? Then, one last question. The emissary with the ballpoint pen raised his hand, not hiding his origin form at all. He continuously poured power into the border relics, allowing the pure man Huaishi's virtual persona to gain more and more control over Huaishi. He racked his brains, not allowing any lies or evasions, and asked the final question. "Now that you have come to Green Sun, what is the thing you want to do the most?" Chapter 705. Now that you've come to Green Sun, what do you want to do the most? When the messenger asked this question, everyone on the other end of the communication channel was horrified and alert. Their hearts sank to the bottom, and they subconsciously activated the plan for a surprise attack and prepared to issue the order to attack. By the time Huai-Shi reacted, it was already too late, because he had already said the answer hidden in the deepest part of his heart. Of course, it's to make money. Huai-Shi stared and replied with a trembling voice, "How good is it to be a gang? You don't have to feel guilty at all when you do evil. Not only can you improve your economic situation, but you can also hide from others and save a lot of money. I say, is Green Sun very rich? Can't you give me more? I'm about to die of poverty. To be honest, if this continues, I'll have to sell myself." Messenger, AI Ching, Huai-Shi, who finally reacted. Dead silence. An awkward silence. Not only Green Sun sitting across from him, even the command team on the other end of the communication channel didn't expect such a strange answer. Only AI Ching, who had long been mentally prepared, picked up the warm water next to her and took the medicine before her stomach hurt. Facing the complicated expressions of her colleagues and subordinates, she waved her hand casually. Everyone sat down. This was a routine operation. "You see, I already said that he's fine." In the long silence, the expressions of the two Green Sun messengers also became quite interesting. A mixed-race teenager who had been discriminated against since childhood didn't choose to retaliate against society or become the person he hated the most after gaining great power. He joined Green Sun because it was more convenient to do evil and there was no moral burden. He didn't have any sense of identity with your program of resisting the astronomical society and the tyranny of the current situation, and he didn't want to rely on you to reach the peak or the bottom of his life. It was purely because he wanted to earn money. Such a simple reason was so convincing that the two messengers were completely speechless and didn't even know how to respond. In the silence, only the squeaking of the ballpoint other party would suddenly turn hostile and rebuke them. The virtual personality of the paper doll in his aspirations was broken, and ideals. But we don't want to butcher things were like revealed. Who stinks no one could go back. The only thing left, although this life ideal is a bit strange, when the two sides looked at each other. The thin messenger shrugged. The thin emissary coughed twice and took the lead to break the silence. Earning money is also a good thing. He extended his hand, relying on one's own ability to make a Mr. White cough. From today onwards, you are a member of Green Sunday. Yes, that's right. The other solemn emissary Huai-Shi was pleasantly surprised and reached out to hold his hand. Does that mean I've passed? And shook it twice. Huai-Shi asked with a flattering smile. The more he felt that this grandson's hand was not quite right. It was as if he had pinched it somewhere before. "However, I have a task for you." The thin emissary forcefully pulled his hand back and looked at the person beside him. The solemn subordinate took out a pistol from his pocket and handed it to him. There was also a photo. In the photo, there was a thin middle-aged man wearing branded sportswear. He looked like a skeleton. His blonde hair was mixed with some linen gray, but his eyes were shockingly green. His eye sockets were deep, and his gaze was frighteningly sharp. He looked like an owl. "Who is this?" "Your goal tonight," the emissary said. "Don't you want to make money? Kill this person, and you'll have money." Kill. Huai-Shi did not quite understand the meaning of this Ingzhou pronoun. The emissary raised his hand and made a gesture to his neck. Huai-Shi shrank his neck and sucked in a breath of cold air. "There's no need to be so cruel, right? Are you afraid?" The emissary chuckled softly. "Don't worry, this guy is definitely the kind who deserves to die. There's no need to feel any burden in your heart. No, what I mean is, do you have to cut his neck?" Huai-Shi asked in confusion and made the gesture of cutting his neck again. "Do you want to bring back the head? It's not good to see blood. It should be better to put it in a box, right?" The emissary rolled his eyes. Anyway, just kill that guy from the Russian Federation. Why are you asking so many questions? Okay. The moment Huaisher nodded, the car stopped. Through the sunscreen film on the glass, he could see the lights of Kyoto in the gradually rising twilight and the huge neon sign next to it. Aisha House. We're here. The emissary pointed in the direction of the car door, indicating that he should get out of the car. Huaisher was completely stunned. We're starting work now. Speed is the most important thing in war, Mr. Huaisher. The emissary said, you can treat this as an assessment. Your treatment in Green Sun will depend on the results of this mission. Huaisher looked at the noisy nightclub outside the window in shock. He turned around and looked at the don't even allow people to be full ghosts.
He began to think about a
if
question.
his avatar was
When he
still
got in the
Mr.
car just
Huaisher,
now,
didn't
they
they
simply
say
want
that
to punch
food would be
someone?
provided on the way?
How do we,
He
the
trembled,
traitor,
with
live
anger.
to satisfy you?
Oh, I'm a traitor. Then it's fine. Since I'm already here, and I'm still young, it's not easy for everyone. Huaisher coughed and asked, well, have you all eaten? 15 minutes later, in a convenience store on 2 streets, after sweeping up all the odin, Huaisher wiped his mouth in satisfaction. He raised his head and smiled at Fujimoto, whose wallet was dry and had a complicated expression. I'm sorry, our strongman ate a lot and consumed a lot of energy. It's okay, it's okay. Fujimoto squeezed out a smile with difficulty. Young people are still developing. Eat more. That's so embarrassing. It's okay, it's okay. It's what I should do. Since you said so, Huaisher turned around and raised his hand to the shop assistant. Please heat up 5 more drumsticks for me. 2 cans of beer. Thank you. In the world, other than drawing cards for free, was there anything happier than sponsored partnerships? Nothing. Huaisher couldn't help but want to praise Green Sunday. If this were to be written in a book, it might even become a moving story. A wandering mixed-race strongman came to the local rich farmer Green Sun's house and asked for a meal. Green Sun entertained him attentively. That night, the mixed-race strongman killed his whole family. After almost all the quick-heat food in the convenience store was finished, Huaisher finally patted his stomach and sighed. Thank you for your hospitality. It's good that you're full. It's good that you're full. Fujimoto's expression twitched. He squeezed out a smile and looked at him. Since you're full, then should we, but I'm still a little hungry. Huaisher got up with a rueful expression and rubbed his stomach. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly turned around and asked, why don't we go to another place and continue the business? Fujimoto felt like he was going crazy. He wanted to punch him. He'd rather not eat and get to work. Okay, why are you so fierce? Huaisher sighed and shrugged. He wanted to point to the van outside and tell him to talk to Green Sunday. After taking 2 steps outside, he patted his head again and turned around to ask, by the way, Brother Fujimoto, have you heard of chivalry? Never heard of it. I don't want to hear it. Shut up. Fujimoto was furious. Get the hell out of here and get to work. Huaisher shrugged and pushed the door out. He walked straight to the nightclub called Aisha's House. While he was delaying, Ai Ching had already investigated the situation of his next opponent. Sergeyevich Mikolov Solenko. Ai Ching looked down at the information in her hands and told him Russian-English mixed blood, 42 years old, nicknamed Old Hyena. He's one of the largest smugglers in the capital. He secretly runs a snakehead business and sells slaves. His specialty is that he can often get a lot of mixed products. You know what I mean, right? A lot of scum like that. Then doesn't that mean that I'm representing Green Sun today? Huaisher replied through the Origin Form communication device. He walked step by step into the neon lights and looked at the luxurious door. Behind the door, he could faintly hear the sound of rock and roll. Handsome men and beautiful women constantly lined up to enter and exit. It was obvious that business was booming. In front of the door, a few burly Russian Federation guards coldly scanned anyone who approached. Weischer hadn't even lined up when he was stopped. The guards' eyes were sharp. They had already seen that Weischer, who didn't have any branded clothes on him, was not their customer. After coming to Ingzhou, it seemed that even the burly Russian Federation people had become polite. They didn't push and shove violently. They just waved their hands to stop him. "Sir, we have a membership system here. We don't welcome unrelated people." They didn't angrily rebuke Weischer, in case he was some kind of rich person who liked to cosplay and came here to fish. It was said that this kind of thing was quite common. Rich people were all perverts. Weischer was also stunned. They didn't make a move immediately. He actually didn't know what to do next. Directly making a move wasn't too good, right? After all, they were quite polite. They were all working people, so why make things difficult for them? The paper effigy in the arms of the newbie, Yakuza, fell into a daze. This was the first time in his life that he had caused trouble. How could he act like he did it often? Waiting online, it was quite urgent. Under the guards' increasingly serious and cold gazes, Weischer thought for a moment and analyzed rationally. In the end, he nodded, said, "Oh," and turned around to leave. In the carriage not far away. A few people who were monitoring this place felt that 100,000 question marks had popped up in their minds. What the F***CK are you doing? Are you going to borrow the toilet? After turning around and walking a few steps, Weischer realized that something was wrong. He quickly stopped, turned around, and walked over again. However, this time, the guards' expressions weren't so good. They became serious and indifferent, with hostility. "As I said, we have a membership system here, sir." The burly guard reached out and pressed the stun baton on his waist. "Unrelated people are not welcome." "Well," Weischer reached out, patted his head, and said seriously, "Are you recruiting people here?" Under the light of the neon lights, he lifted the bangs on his forehead, revealing a handsome face and a shy smile. He blinded the guard's dog eyes. He could always be a cowherd. Chapter 706. Just like that, he sneaked in when he walked through the back door of Aisha's house. Even Weischer himself couldn't believe it, not to mention the two green sun messengers who were peeping in the car at the corner of the street in the distance. They looked at each other. If it weren't for the fact that the listening device placed on Weischer's body was still running, indicating that he was going deeper into the nightclub step by step, they would almost suspect that this guy just found an excuse and ran away. "What should we do?" The burly subordinate turned around in amazement and looked at the real leader, the messenger who was frantically spinning the pen in his hand, asking for advice. According to the original plan, this job should have been given to them, but they were temporarily thrown here as a proof of allegiance to the newcomer, after killing that Russian Federation guy. From then on, he could only be at odds with the other extreme Dao masters outside the 5 factions. It was natural for the difficulty to exceed the standard, and the two were already prepared to help at any time. But they didn't expect that Weischer would suddenly go in alone to apply for a job without saying a word. What the hell are they going to do? Could it be that he saw that the other side was powerful and influential, and then became a traitor as soon as he joined Green Sun? If it weren't for the fact that they couldn't hear any signs of betrayal from Weischer, the two messengers would have immediately launched a one-stop service of exterminating the traitor. So, now, should they provide support? In the leader's hand, the metal ballpoint pen kept spinning, but it suddenly stopped between his 5 fingers. "Wait," he said, "let's see the situation first." There was still a steady stream of sound coming from the listening device. When the noisy rock and electronic music were blocked by the thick door, Weischer was already taken to the back. In the corridor, All kinds of young ladies wearing very little clothes didn't care about their graceful bodies being exposed at all. They walked through the corridor with incomparable generosity. Occasionally, when they saw Why Sure, they would smile at him and the security guard next to him, reach out and touch the little brother's chin and butt, and ask where this little fresh meat came from. In the face of sexual harassment before he even entered the job, Why Sure habitually wanted to cry, but when he thought of his mission, he could only pretend to be an innocent young man and let these old women, who were not as beautiful as him, tease him. The benefits of the bangs appeared at this time. It shielded him from prying eyes and allowed him to see all the security details. There were 4 floors in the building. The first floor was the basement, and it was heavily guarded. No one knew what was going on. The first and second floors were mostly occupied by the noisy stage and booths of nightclubs. The third floor was also sealed off, and there was only one dedicated elevator. As he passed by a door, he heard a familiar clicking sound mixed with Russian laughter. It was the sound of steel grinding against steel. Gun. The waiter who passed by had a strange smell on him. A few grains of white powder could be faintly seen outside the exquisitely decorated box on the plate in his hand. Why Sure's footsteps paused for a moment, and he hurriedly glanced at him. Under the dim light, he could distinguish a few needle marks on the tattoo on the back of his neck and wrist. He was not the only one. Except for the security guards outside, most of the people here had needle holes and injection marks on their bodies, especially the young women who had just come out of the locker room. More or less, there were traces of beastification on their bodies. Their graceful bodies were decorated with small blood spots. Their eyes were blurred, their faces were red, and they were excited abnormally. Why Sure couldn't help but look over, but he was pushed by the guard behind him. Don't look around. Okay. The paper doll in his arms shrunk her neck and smiled at him fawningly. Behind the closed locker room door, there were cries and angry voices. Something was smashed on the ground and broke. Soon, the cries could not be heard, because they had already gone far. To be honest, this is the first time I've done this kind of thing. Why Sure lowered his head and sighed softly. The guard glanced back at him and said coldly, "Don't worry, you'll get used to it soon." Why Sure asked, "What if I can't get used to it?" The guard ignored him. Obviously, he didn't like a guy like him who could make a living with a good face. Why Sure lowered his eyes and didn't say anything. He just took a deep breath. What's the use of waiving the bill? Do the customers who come here care about that little bit of money? Don't send goods that haven't been taught well over there again. In the crowded backstage, Why Sure finally saw the busy manager. The female manager angrily scolded the assistant beside her and slapped her twice. Send a bottle of Baijiu to Mr. Chitian on the second floor. Later, I'll take the new woman to apologize in person. She then said, Mr. Chitian on the second floor, give him a bottle of Baijiu. What are you waiting for? Hurry up. After sending the assistant away, the cold female manager looked over with a stern and harsh gaze. But no matter how stern and harsh her gaze was, she couldn't help but be surprised when she saw this face. She reached out and pinched the chin of the paper doll in her arms. She raised her hand and pulled up her bangs. She looked down at the evasive eyes in disbelief. This is really a pleasant surprise. You've done well this time. We just posted the recruitment this morning, and such a good seedling came to our door. What's her name? Why paper doll? Don't be nervous, Surin Kuan. The manager stared at his face and guessed how much money this face could cheat from the group of brainless female guests. She was so excited that she was about to drool. Do you have any talent? Does magic count? The paper doll in her arms avoided her burning gaze and asked uneasily, The manager smiled dotingly, which was rare. She couldn't help but reach out and scratch the cute little face. Magic? Magic is good. I know magic too. But Huaisher was distracted. He looked at the corner of the backstage and saw the woman who was dragged into the room by her hair while crying until the door was closed. Surin Kuan, what kind of magic do you know? The manager had already come over and asked, "Can you show me?" Okay. Huaisher forced himself to stay calm and squeezed out a smile. Look, like all the street magic shows before the start of the performance, he showed his hands and 10 fingers. There was nothing hidden. Then he slowly closed his hands, intertwined his fingers, raised them, and put them in front of her. Next, it's time to witness the miracle. Huaisher told her seriously, but then he didn't open his fingers, nor did he make something out of nothing. Instead, he pushed his clenched fists forward. Bang! The whole noisy backstage instantly burst out a roar that surpassed all the noise and spread. It was as if a small bomb had been detonated at this moment. The terrifying firepower was placed on his clenched fists. With Huaisher's action, the power converged into a line and burst forward. The heavenly drum sounded, and thunder suddenly appeared. Triple drummer thunderbolt! The cone-shaped blood mist and countless sticky rain burst out. In an instant, more than half of the backstage was dyed scarlet. The broken tissues stuck to the crystal lamp on the ceiling, and the whole backstage was dyed in dreamy pink. Dead silence came suddenly. A headless body fell on its back and fell to the floor with an exceptionally dull sound, and the magic show of the paper doll came to an end. He looked around and asked for the opinions of the surrounding audience. Such a big head disappeared in the blink of an eye. Wasn't it amazing? Shouts of admiration and excited screams followed, offering cheers for this magic show. The enthusiastic audience fled in all directions, afraid that the deadly magician would make an encore return. Sorry, I didn't want to do it so early. Huaisher turned back and shrugged at the dull guard. But you see, I couldn't hold back and didn't even get your boss's location. Before he could react, Huaisher reached out and pulled out the pistol from his holster, flipped the safety, aimed at his knee, and pulled the trigger. Then he shot the other knee. Finally, after thinking about it, he shot the guard in the head again. With a loud bang, the only audience left in the backstage was the manager lying on the ground. But the manager didn't speak and didn't want to give a good review. He didn't know why. Huaisher could only put his hands together and pray devoutly for the manager on the ground. I hope she's okay, but there's nothing I can do about it. In the sound of hurried footsteps in the distance, Huaisher stretched his neck and spread his hands to the manager on the ground, indicating that he couldn't help. Then he turned and walked to the front desk. Opening the curtain, Huaisher was bathed in the explosive drumbeat and melody, and he couldn't help but shake his head. On the dimly lit dance floor, colorful laser lights crisscrossed and swept across. Under the high-pitched electronic music, countless guests followed along on the dance floor. The hot dancers on the steel pipes swayed their bodies and became part of the hustle and bustle. The air was dense with the smell of burning tobacco and alcohol. The white bodies undulated and danced in the darkness, and under the flickering light, they became dreamy and misty. The extravagant nightlife had just begun. However, if he was only satisfied with this level of catharsis, wouldn't it be a bit too boring? He wanted to add fuel to the fire of this dull nightlife. Passing through this short corridor, Huaisher raised his hand and tied his short hair behind his head, revealing sharp horns and slender eyes. He smiled at all the people who looked at him. The originally sloppy and autistic man had disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by an indescribable attraction, like a searchlight radiating in all directions. Under the flickering light, the handsome face was like an evil spirit, revealing an unprecedented dangerous aura. from his smile. In this way, he swaggered forward, pushed away the staff who came up to inquire, went straight to the tuning console, and squeezed between the two DJs who cooperated seamlessly. Smiling, he raised his hand and put it on the shoulders of the two DJs. "Sorry, I'm ready to go to work." He intimately whispered to the two DJs, "Please give me your seats." This was the last sound the two DJs heard in the noisy music. The next moment, their vision turned black, and they couldn't help but collapse and roll under the console, leaving the heavy headphones spinning in Weischer's hand. When the rhythm of the disc stopped abruptly, the guests who were immersed in the rhythm raised their eyes and then saw a smiling face under the flickering light. Chapter 707. Hello, everybody. Weischer opened his arms and announced to the guests without any stage fright. In the midst of the sharp electronic sound, the low voice echoed between the laser beams. "The boring nursery rhyme time is over. Everyone." On the mixer, the man who dominated the entire club raised his arm and grinned. "Next is the time to truly step into the dangerous territory. I know that all of you yearn for more excitement, more power, and more violence. That's right, I know all of it. Are there any children who don't want to leave without drinking the juice? Are there any cowards who want to escape? Are there any people who don't want to welcome this wonderful and violent night?" Leaving the confused band aside, Weischer raised her hand and announced to the excited guests in the low electric current sound, "You're welcome to join us. You're welcome. The theme is extreme. The theme is war. The theme is death and blood. Timeterok, burn, the soul of Yakuza." In the eyes full of curiosity and expectation, Weischer grinned, raised the two pistols in his hands, aimed at the ceiling, and pulled the trigger again and again. In the roar of gunfire, he cheered, "Next, our staff will personally present a performance for everyone. Welcome to the night of crime." An instant of silence arrived. When the screams and roars from backstage spread, all the stunned eyes were lit up by the flames of surprise. Whether it was the hoarse voice full of mystery or the handsome and dangerous, ferocious atmosphere, this infectious power spread with the words and the restless melody, instantly igniting the enthusiasm of all the guests. Surprised cheers sounded from the audience. Countless hands were raised, dancing with Weischer's two pistols, offering excited shouts for this dangerous game. Only the dancers and waiters looked around hesitantly. They did not understand what had happened, but when the gunshots rang out, they felt the fear that came from the bottom of their hearts. No, this is not a performance at all, but boom! Amidst the loud noise, a guard finally rushed to the front from the backstage, but when he saw the radiant figure under the laser light, he couldn't help but fall into an instant of shock. Then, the order from the supervisor overwhelmed everything else. He instinctively pulled out his stun baton and rushed to the stage, roaring and launching an attack. At that moment, under the crazy flashing lights, he caught a glimpse of a chilling smile. That was the last thing he saw, because the prelude to the performance had finally begun. Weischer raised his hand. He pinched his face and violently lifted him off the ground. Then, he punched him with all his might. In an instant, the guard's body bent into an unimaginable arc. The expensive microphone and sound receiver transmitted the crisp sound of broken bones to everyone's ears. Then his arms, legs, and finally his head. Under the cruel ravages and heavy blows, along with the drum beats, it became one of the rhythms of the electronic music. A high-pitched voice boomed from the huge sound system. Weischer reached out and pulled out the stun baton from the guard's hand. He waved it like a light stick and walked towards his opponents step by step. "I'm gonna fight him off. A seven-nation army called hold me back. I'm going to beat them back. Even a seven-nation army can't stop me." Now, the man that the seven armies couldn't defeat was right in front of them, smiling at them. "Let's begin," Weischer said. This was the beginning of the tragic night of crime. There had never been such a bizarre battle and slaughter. The intruder and the guard fought together. It was a one-sided slaughter. The result was cheers from both sides. Countless excited audience members enjoyed the official performance provided by the club. They were amazed by the realistic and tragic scene. As expected of the night of crime, the gunshots and blood were so realistic. Yuriko, look at the way this person is wailing on the ground. It's like his bones are really broken. Even the ear-piercing alarm is so ingenious. It's so realistic to simulate an attack and a gunfight. It's so good to drink. Waiter, give me a bottle of Salute. Waiter? F***CK. Where's the waiter? Forget it. I don't care. Big Brother is awesome. There was no need for alcohol or beauty. The guests whose eyes were burned red by violence screamed crazily. They cheered for the performance. Even the burly messenger who sneaked in to help was stunned. He had never seen such a thing. How could it be like this? By the time the guests on the second floor were awakened from their intoxicated dreams by the noise outside the door, it was already too late. The young man who was covered in blood had already pushed the door open. He smiled at the mess inside and nodded politely. Sorry to disturb you. I'm here to give you the gifts. The gifts included 200,000 volts of electric shock, Beretta 9mm caliber bullets, and a sumo shogun that could destroy all poisonous insects and human traffickers' heads after 10 minutes of practice. The gifts were evenly distributed to the guests and staff who should have booked a private room in hell. If they encountered them in the corridor, they would be planted in the corridor floor. If they encountered them in the room, they would be hung on the ceiling chandelier. If they encountered them in the toilet, they would be flushed down the toilet. This was a slow and incomparably efficient bloodbath, a massacre that didn't spare anyone whose hands were stained with blood. Run! Run! Huaisher turned around and looked at the dazed girls one last time. He whispered with pity, "You're free, even if it's only temporary," but the girls didn't seem to understand him. They were still intoxicated by the effects of the forbidden drugs. They giggled and pulled his trousers. They invited him to join them. Huaisher closed his eyes, turned around, and walked to the elevator that led to the top floor. In the shrill sound of the fire alarm, the fire and thick smoke danced under the torrential rain of fire sprinklers. The locked elevator burst out a whine and opened to both sides with the help of two hands. Inside the empty elevator shaft, the cables were swaying rapidly, as if someone was crawling. When Huaisher lowered his head, he saw a frightened face looking up at him. "Hello." Huaisher politely waved and greeted him. Then he pointed the stun baton in his hand at the man's face and asked softly, "Do you know where your boss is?" The blood-stained face looked down at him. The cold eyes were filled with darkness and malevolence. Being stared at by those eyes, he felt as if his soul was about to be sucked away. "Upstairs, upstairs." The man who escaped answered in a panic. He's in the safe room." "Okay, thank you." Huaisher nodded and thanked him sincerely. Then he pressed the button. Goodbye. Lightning flashed. Amidst the muffled screams, the sound of a heavy object falling to the ground rang out from the bottom of the elevator shaft. It was so crisp. Finally, he raised his head and looked upstairs. Trash. You're all trash. In the sealed safe room, Sergei almost crushed the phone in his hand. So many people, so many guns. You can't even do anything to a bastard. What's the use of raising so many of you? Where are the ascenders? Where are the ascenders we invited? They, on the other end of the phone, the frightened voice replied, "They're all so dead. It's another man I've never seen before. Help." The screams rang out, but soon they stopped abruptly. Soon, with the sound of heavy footsteps, The phone that had fallen to the ground was picked up from the pool of blood and put to the ear of the messenger from Green Sunday. "Hello? Is anyone there?" Sergei subconsciously held his breath and didn't say anything. He looked at himself in the mirror in fear, afraid that an invisible ghost would appear behind him. "Hello, Mr. Sergei. Nice to meet you." The young man on the other end of the phone introduced himself politely. "You may have heard of me. My name is Feng Jian, Green Sun's Feng Jian. I'm here to obtain justice for my compatriots, including the 51 lives you secretly sold in the past 3 years, as well as the countless pitiful people who died because of it. Ha ha. If the one who came today was my father when he was young, he would definitely say this, right? But don't worry. Since this matter has been handed over to me, it definitely won't become a condescending crusade. A person like me really doesn't have a sense of justice to speak of, and I don't have a strong sense of honor like my father." He paused for a moment, enjoying the glimmer of hope that rose in Sergei's heart on the other end. Then he grinned and smiled sinisterly. "So, I don't need those high-sounding reasons and excuses. I want to do something because I want to do it. It's just like how I want to kill you in a stinking ditch. It's just purely because I want to trample on a bastard like you to death." In the midst of Sergei's angry curses, he whistled in satisfaction and finally said goodbye. "Now it's time to die. Sergei, listen to the footsteps from hell." Following his words, the sound of heavy footsteps gradually came from outside the safe house. Separated by a thick wall and a dozen centimeters of alloy interlayer, the distant sound of breathing seeped into the enclosed space. Then the entire floor suddenly shook. Countless dust rustled and flew up. Then there was another shake. After 2 consecutive roars like that of a pile driver, wind surged on the other side of the wall amidst the dead silence. Deep breaths. Then, immediately after, push hands. A clear palm print appeared on the cracked wall. Then a second, a third, and even a fourth, a loud sound spread out. Hell was ringing. 15 minutes later, the shrill sound of a fire alarm rang out from the street, accompanied by customers fleeing in panic. Dozens of fire trucks roared toward the burning building, and just 2 streets away, Huaisher, who had changed into a t-shirt, washed his face at the tap in the park, and returned to the van. He wiped the water droplets on his face that hadn't dried yet. His face was pale, and he took the initiative to apologize before they could say anything. "Sorry, I screwed up." Feng Jian, who had been smoking and waiting for the good news, was stunned for a long time. He didn't expect to receive such a result. He ran away? Feng Jian couldn't believe it. Could it be that he has some helpers? "No, I didn't let him run away." Huaisher lowered his head in shame and handed over a soft plastic bag. "But how should I say it? I was too used to it and forgot that you were going to cut off his head. I was careless and it was smashed." The plain man in his arms was too ashamed to show his face. It was an epic mistake, too outrageous. After not using a weapon, he actually forgot to cut off his head. In desperation, he could only go downstairs and get a plastic bag and a dustpan to scoop up the pile of things on the ground. In any case, it was as good as having his head here. I'm new here and don't know the rules. I hope Green Sun's big brother won't mind. Why don't we just make do with it? Chapter 708. In the end, Green Day's people still took the plastic bag away. He didn't know what they were going to do with it. But it was Green Day, so it wasn't strange that they had a lot of perverts. Maybe they could use it somewhere. Otherwise, why would a normal person want someone else's head? For the time being, he had passed the test. After receiving the proof of allegiance, everyone was a hero of Liangshan. In the future, they would eat meat, drink wine, and divide the gold. Once they killed their way into the British Isles, occupied London, and captured the decision-making room of the Command Bureau alive, the big boss would become the emperor, the small boss would become the second emperor, and you would continue to be a traitor. Thinking of this, Huaisher couldn't help but sigh. He sat in the front passenger seat, smoking and worried. In the driver's seat, Fujimoto took out a thick envelope and handed it over. Okay, don't be so sad. This is your share. Huaisher pinched the thickness of the envelope and opened it. He found that it wasn't Ingzhou's currency, which had a large exchange rate, but the powerful origin substance exchange currency, US dollars. They were all of the largest denominations. There was actually around 300,000 in one package. According to the ratio of 4-to-1, it was equivalent to 1,200,000 dongxia dollars. This, Huaisher was stunned. This is for me? He was full of amazement, but he wasn't surprised by the number. Instead, he sighed with emotion. How did you villains really get paid for the work you did? Just treat it as a windfall. This kind of work is very rare. Those two didn't take it, and I didn't do anything. If you need money urgently, I'll just give it to you. Fujimoto felt his heart ache. He asked reluctantly, how about I hold it for you first? You're so young. You'll definitely spend money recklessly. I'll give it to you monthly. Don't worry. Do you think the boss will swallow your money? He. Huaisher revealed a simple and honest smile and put the envelope in his pocket. He had an expression that said, I don't know what you're talking about. You still want the money in my hands. Before he could finish his thoughts, Ai Qing reminded him, Huaisher, stolen money needs to be recorded and filed. The money in his hands instantly lost its fragrance. Huaisher lowered his head sadly. His whole body trembled, and his hands and feet were cold. He almost couldn't hold back his tears. Why is your astronomy society even more ruthless than Green Sun? Fujimoto noticed the change in his expression and thought of his file. He thought that he was thinking of his parents who were seriously ill. He sighed and raised his hand to pat his shoulder. All right, don't be sad. So many people from the Russian Federation died today, and we have to celebrate. How about we call everyone for supper? It's my treat. I know a barbecue restaurant that serves peony hot pot. It tastes really good. It was obvious that he was hungry after watching Huaisher sweep everything away. Without waiting for Huaisher's response, he took out his phone and called out the cadres of the Fujimoto group one by one. He wanted to use this opportunity to formally introduce Huaisher to the team members. The van drove Huaisher around the city before finally stopping at a street with a cluster of taverns on the outskirts of the inner circle of Donghua City. There were already people waiting there. They went out in the middle of the night. They were still meticulously dressed in black suits. When they saw Fujimoto, one by one, they spread their legs, put their hands on their knees, and bowed 90 degrees to Fujimoto. They respectfully called out, "Dear brother!" On the contrary, Fujimoto, who was wearing sportswear, smiled and waved his hand, indicating that they shouldn't be so serious. He wanted to introduce a little brother to everyone. As he spoke, he pointed at Huaisher. We will be a family in the future. As his elder brothers, you must guide him more. Understand? Yes. Everyone nodded in unison, and then they became a little more casual. Everyone chatted and laughed with each other, but no one took Huaisher, the newcomer, seriously. Among them, Huaisher's introducer, Tanaka's sworn brother. Yamashita glanced at him with obvious displeasure. He meant that the newcomer didn't know the rules at all. Hurry up and curry favor with the big brothers and greet them one by one. Huaishe just pretended not to see it. He shook his bangs and followed behind, smoking a cigarette, and looked at the lights on both sides of the street. Who do you think you are? Soon, they stopped in front of an izakaya. Obviously, they had been here countless times. As soon as Fujimoto entered the door, he waved to the woman behind the counter. Oh, Ms. Jinjiang, long time no see. How's business recently? It's nothing. The female boss, who was engrossed in accounting, raised her head and nodded enthusiastically. It's all thanks to your care. The private room is ready. Please come in, gentlemen. After saying that, she politely led the way in front and invited them into the private room. After giving them handkerchiefs and sake, she considerately closed the door for them. Soon, the dishes were served continuously. To Huaishe's surprise, Fujimoto really didn't brag. This restaurant was really good, and the taste was much better than ordinary. Even an ordinary cold tofu had a unique taste. Well, although the craftsmanship was a little worse than his, and couldn't be compared with feng shui. With wine and food to drink, Huaishe was too lazy to care about other things. Anyway, he was going to get a free meal. It was true that he was undercover, but he had been a second wheel for so many years. Would he really go and kiss a cold ass at the foot of the mountain? On the other hand, the others seemed to take care of Huaishe and spoke gently to him. After several rounds of toasts, Huaishe became more and more pleasing to the eye. A few of the mixed-race seniors drank to their heart's content and simply took off their disguises, smoking and scratching their feet. Some of them even sang along with Fujimoto, wailing like ghosts and howling like wolves. They finally looked a little bit like the extreme Tao. Huaishe, who was silently watching from the side, raised his head and drank the wine in his cup, sighing silently. I feel that they are actually very humane, right? AI Ching's voice came from the communication device. Indeed, it's a little unexpected. No matter how heartless a person is, maybe they will also raise a cat. Huaishe. She smiled coldly. If I had known, I would have let you go to the Yoshida-kai first to experience the abyss of suffering as an underling. When the company started, the boss would say that everyone is a family. When the shares are distributed, do you think you will have a share? Huaishe was speechless. AI Ching raised her head and looked at the organizational structure of the Fujimoto Group on the big screen. She began to introduce the business scope of the other Fujimoto Group members and the information of several leaders to Huaishe one by one. Group leader Fujimoto, Wakitsuyama, brother Tashino, consultant Takuma, headquarters Nagatsuyama, and Wakitsuyama Takazawa. Just the sentences of the few people here were enough for a newborn baby to stay in prison for 5 generations. As a small gang with only more than 70 official members, the Fujimoto Group was barely able to stand in the inner circle of Danbois. In addition to relying on the shooting of some conventional movies and usury, they also relied on human resources and other intermediary work. Usually, they would introduce some mixed-race fellows to do illegal work and extract a high harvest from it. For some mixed-race fellows, it was good enough to not starve to death if they had a job. The Fujimoto Group was simply a great philanthropist. As for sending wreaths and guarding the small steel ball shop, it was not worth mentioning at all. Sending wreaths in Ingzhou was not as serious as sending wreaths in Dongxia. It was almost like sending a flower basket in the name of the company when there was a new store on the street. It was a euphemistic notice. Brother, pay the protection fee. Such a third-rate gang could survive for more than 10 years. First, it relied on the flexible mind of the group leader Fujimoto. He was used to changing the rudder according to the wind and could always open up a new source of income. Second, it relied on the support given by Green Sun as a former peripheral member to get the care of the five bosses. Considering the recent frequent actions of Green Sun, it was an opportunity to enter the inner circle of Green Sunday. If it were not for this reason, AI Ching would not put Huaishir here. Looking at it now, it was a wonderful move. After joining Green Sun, he was obviously regarded as a confidant by Fujimoto, and his status in the Fujimoto group also rose. However, what confused Huaishir more was the purpose of Green Sun itself. What are the guys in Green Sun doing? He took a bite of the plate of edamame in front of him and pondered. No matter how much he hated and feared Green Sun, he couldn't deny that they did bring a temporary peace to this group of helpless mixed-race fellows. A notorious terrorist organization in the whole territory would infiltrate Yingzhou at all costs just to stand up for a group of trafficked mixed-race girls. Isn't this normal? Are you falling into dualism again? Are you plugged in diodes in your head? AI Ching sighed with a headache. Just like the Astronomy Society, such a huge organization must have a dark side. Green Sun can become the largest terrorist organization in the whole territory. How can it not have a bright spot worth bragging about? Huaishir paused for a moment. You want to say that Green Sun is indeed the protector of justice of the mixed race. From the perspective of brutality and bloodshed, Green Sun may really be similar to the previous group of gods, but they may not be just and benevolent. AI Ching asked coldly, do you know the original origins of the so-called extreme Tao, Yakuza, and even the Mafia? Without exception, in the beginning, they were just mutual aid organizations like the Sobriety Club. Can you say that it is wrong to help each other? People yearn for order and can't live in turmoil and chaos. The game can only be played when there are rules. No one likes a world where you can't even buy a box of batteries. But do you know how many steps are needed to produce batteries? From raw materials to rough processing, sending it to the factory, and finally sending it to the world as a product. Finally, you spend money from the convenience store and put it into your remote control. It relies on a set of universal order. If people want to live, they have to rely on the existence of order, no matter how bad the order is. But if they can't get protection from the order, if they are abandoned by the original order, then people will instinctively turn to other places and look for places that can protect themselves. This has nothing to do with the goodness or evil of people. After justice and due rights are gone, helpless people can only huddle together for warmth, seek new authority, rely on village conventions, clans, or organizations. Even if these authorities are more blatantly corrupt and ferocious. You should have seen that movie, right? The civilians' love for the Godfather is their worship for this authority. You know that he is a bloody figure, but you need someone who can stand up for you, a savior who can protect you. Especially in Yingzhou, where discrimination is almost on the table, you can't survive if you don't huddle together. It's a pity. Why sure? For many people, Green Sun is the savior, and the Astronomy Association is too far away. In the silence, Huaishir couldn't help but shake his head. But do they have a choice? If there is a choice, aren't they even more abominable now? AI Ching replied coldly. You can say that I was forced by life. People like me who are standing on the shore are just lucky. It's easy for you to say that. However, if you choose a way of life that can't be seen in the light, you shouldn't be afraid that something will eat you in the dark, and you shouldn't blame the hunter for becoming your enemy. People who are unwilling to fall may die painfully, but there is no cure for those who are willing to fall. Don't forget, in order to subvert the Astronomy Association, Green Sun is willing to do anything, even if blood flows like a river. Don't forget what you are here for. Huaishir sighed and asked, can't the Astronomy Association help them? Aren't we helping them? Otherwise, what are we doing? No, I mean go one step further. Sorry, that's impossible. The Astronomy Association is not allowed to interfere with national sovereignty and internal affairs. After all, the rules of the Directorate of Defense can't cover all places, nor can it cover everything. In the quiet office, Ai Ching raised her eyes and looked at the city outside the blinds. If the Directorate of Defense really controls the world, who can guarantee that the Directorate of Defense won't become the next utopia? Huaishur didn't say anything else. Unable to stand the thick smell of smoke in the room, he found an excuse to go to the bathroom and sneaked out to get some fresh air while a group of drunk guys were talking. The wine house was silent. In the middle of the night, all the guests downstairs had left, the tables and chairs had been cleaned up, the door was open, and a cool breeze blew in from the night. The lady boss was wiping the lampshade and chatting with the guests in front of the bar. When she saw him coming down, she asked enthusiastically, "Do you need anything else? As for the wine, it will be ready soon." "No, I just came down for a walk." Huaishur pointed at the bar. "Do you mind if I sit here? If possible, please give me a beer, the same as this gentleman's." The burly guest sitting next to the bar raised his eyes and glanced at him as if he was disgusted, but he didn't say anything. His dark skin was full of sun, and there was a faint smell of fish scales and the smell of the sea. He was a fisherman. He gobbled up the rice and fried chicken like a whirlwind. He raised his hand and drank all the beer in the cup. "Mr. Takahashi, is today's taste good?" "Yes, Miss Zhang's cooking has always been good. I'm full." The fisherman, Takahashi, grinned and tried to curry favor. Unfortunately, his rough facial features and stubble could almost scare a child. Huaishur sensed that something was amiss and felt a little awkward. He had come down to be a third wheel. No wonder the man hated him. He picked up the beer and drank 2 mouthfuls. He was about to find an excuse to go back when he heard footsteps outside the door. A haggard man walked into the wine house tiredly. "Sorry to disturb you." He held an old photo in his hand and asked eagerly as soon as he entered the door, "May I ask?" Huaishur, who was about to leave, stopped and looked up in surprise. He saw a familiar face. It was his opponent and good teammate in the cooking competition, the head chef of Sun2, Shun Jinxing. So, the figure he saw during the day was him. Shun Jinxing was also stunned. He looked at the lady boss behind the counter in a daze. The photo in his hand trembled, and he almost couldn't hold it firmly. "Tao." He staggered forward, widened his eyes, and looked at the face that appeared countless times in his dreams. He almost burst into tears. "Miss Tao, is that you?" Clang! The empty glass in the lady boss's hand fell to the ground. Chapter 709. It could only be said that the scene was very awkward. Huaishur stood dumbfounded at the side, unable to react. He didn't understand why Shun Jinxing, a dignified cooking demon, would come to an izakaya in the inner circle of Danhua. And before this, it seemed that he had spared no effort to inquire about it for a long time. Shun Jinxing couldn't care so much anymore. He moved to the front of the bar step by step, not noticing the existence of other people at all. There was only the stunned woman left in his eyes. "Miss Tao, it's really you, it's really you." He grabbed the lady boss's hand and was so excited that he was about to cry. I finally found you." Tao's hand stiffened, and she subconsciously withdrew it. She said dryly, "Mr. Shun Jinxing, please calm down. It's still business hours." Sorry. Shun Jinxing finally realized that he had lost his composure. He quickly took a step back and raised his sleeve to wipe his red eyes, showing a solemn and sincere expression. He took another step back, bent down, knelt on the ground, and lowered his head deeply. "I know that suddenly coming to you will disturb you, but please accept my apology." He lowered his head and sincerely begged, "Please forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye last time. And please, please give me another chance. This is my lifetime request. Miss Ah Tao. He raised his head and stared into her eyes. He said loudly, please let us start again, Ah Tao. This time, I will never let you leave me. He mustered up his courage and said what he should have said long ago. I have been in love with you for a long, long, long time. Please, please marry me. Huai sure felt that his hand was almost unable to hold the cup. The melon stuffed into his mouth was so big that he couldn't react. What was this guy thinking? Suddenly, he came to her door without any foreshadowing. Just like that, he proposed to her out of the blue. Big brother, it's not unreasonable for you to be single for so many years. Even the plot of Childhood Sweethearts isn't like this. How can you ask her to marry you as soon as you come to her door after not seeing her for so many years? If you ate one less puffer fish, you wouldn't be so rash, right? The first to react was not the lady boss, but the furious fisherman Gao Qiao. Bastard, what the hell are you talking about? The burly man couldn't restrain his anger. He reached out and violently pulled Shen Jinqing up from the ground. He stared at his face and was so angry that his beard and hair stood on end. He growled, I've heard about it for a long time. You're the stalker who asked about Ms. Jiang everywhere. How dare you come here? Without waiting for Shinjin to answer, Takahashi raised his fist and wanted to kill the scum who came to harass them here. Huaisher, who reacted, quickly reached out and tried to grab Gao Qiao's arm. The lady boss was even faster than him. She didn't know whether she should be called Ms. Jiang or Miss Ah Tao, but at this moment she stood in front of Shinjin, blocking this battle that was about to break out. Please don't be like this. This is my personal matter. Let me deal with it. I'm not. Gao Qiao was stunned, and his livid face gradually solidified. Perceiving the sincerity in her expression, he seemed to understand something, and his expression suddenly became gray. He let go of her hand. Wearily, he returned to his seat and lowered his head to drink wine. The dejected look on his face made him look like a defeated fighting dog. Miss Ah Tao, I knew it. I knew it. Shinjin looked at her in surprise. You have me in your heart, don't you? I'm sorry, Shinjin-kun. In front of Shinjin, the lady boss opened her mouth several times, wanting to say something, but in the end, she lowered her eyes and politely refused. Thank you for going through so much trouble to find me. It's great to be able to reunite with an old friend. But unfortunately, I don't agree to your request. Please go back. Why? Don't you know my feelings for you? It's because of the child, right? I don't mind. It doesn't matter. I will treat her as my own daughter. We can raise her together. You don't deserve to raise his child. This sentence was imagined by Huaisher next to him. He couldn't stand it anymore. These two operations were not at the level of eating rice. They were directly planting rice in his mouth. He slapped his forehead and couldn't watch it anymore. He was so anxious. Ah Tao didn't speak. She just looked at him silently and shook her head slightly. Shinjin's face turned pale, little by little. It doesn't matter if the child doesn't change her surname. Really, he begged humbly, almost crying. Don't you understand my sincerity? He couldn't hold back his tears and sobs anymore. I just want to spend my life with Miss Ah Tao. Sorry, Shinjin-kun, I can't promise you. Ah Tao bent down and refused without any euphemism. But I'm married, have a new family, So, please don't come to me in the future. With that, she looked back at Takahashi, who was drinking behind her. Takahashi was holding a wine glass in his hand and hadn't reacted yet. He looked at her blankly and didn't understand what she meant. In a short silence, Ah Tao's eyes gradually begged. Huaisher sighed and gave the dog a fierce kick under the table, causing him to finally come to his senses. He suddenly realized what was going on and stared at Shinjin with wide eyes. Bastard, didn't you listen to her? With a slap on the table, Takahashi raised his voice. Don't let me see you here again. In the dead silence, Shinjin Kei's figure bent down, little by little. The light and expectation in his eyes gradually extinguished. His face was ashen. I'm sorry. It's me. I disturbed you. He turned around in a sorry state and staggered away. Without looking back, he rushed into the darkness of the night and disappeared. Only the sound of lamentation came from afar. Ah Tao quietly stared in the direction of his departure and didn't say anything. For a long time, she lowered her head and wiped the corners of her eyes. She turned back and forced a smile to her guests. Sorry, I made a fool of myself. I also caused trouble for Mr. Takahashi. No, I have nothing to do with it. Takahashi patted his chest and widened his eyes. His face was red, and he wanted to say something. He was so anxious that he even spoke in dialect. But looking at her calm appearance, he couldn't speak. He slowly lowered his head, wearily. Please give me another glass of beer. Huaishur sighed and handed over the beer glass in his hand. He looked back in the direction of the door and sighed helplessly. If you ask me, that guy should be a good person. Tao shook her head and didn't speak. Takahashi stared over and motioned him to say less. If Huaishur hadn't reminded him just now, he might have scolded him now. It's not good to drink alone. There's a little octopus and tofu. Take it as an apology for the trouble. Behind the kitchen counter, the lady boss was preparing the dishes neatly. Soon, 2 dishes were served to go with the wine. While she was busy, Huaishur looked up at the wall behind the counter and the photo next to the business license, Kyoto Middle School Painting Competition Silver Award, near Jianglina. The little girl in the photo was holding the trophy and smiling brightly, but her face was slightly pale. The sleeve that was deliberately pulled down still couldn't hide the bruise color on the back of her hand. It was a trace left by the swelling of the blood vessels due to too many injections. Did something happen to that child? Huaishur asked curiously. Immediately, Gao Qiao glared at her from the side, indicating that she shouldn't mention it. The landlady paused, shook her head, and sighed. Nothing. That child, like you, is a guest. Huaishur touched the horn on his forehead, subconsciously. He forgot to cover it when he was drinking in the private room. Now, he realized it. In fact, you don't have to care. It's just a thing of the past. The landlady had calmed down. She took out a cigarette box from her pocket and asked the 2. After seeing that the 2 had no objection, she nodded and said that she was rude. Then she tilted her head and lit it. When I was under a lot of pressure, I got a bad habit. When I got older, I wanted to change it, but I couldn't. She smiled helplessly. Anyway, it's all over, isn't it? Huaishur hesitated for a long time and asked curiously, Single mothers are not uncommon. Isn't it good to start over? In the silence, he noticed that the 2 people looked at him strangely, as if they were looking at a child who didn't understand anything. It was as if they were asking, Are you really from Yingzhou? Huaishur had nothing to say. He raised his hand and patted his forehead. He had forgotten the feelings of the people in this damn place. It wasn't easy for a single mother to live anywhere, let alone with a mixed-race child. Ms. Jin Jiang or Miss Tao didn't avoid the past. After the age of a little girl, she had seen through everything. In her words, it was just a stupid thing she had done when she was young. When she was young and ignorant, she was deceived by sweet words. After discovering that she was pregnant, the other party continued to disappear overnight with all her belongings. When the hospital found out that the child was a mixed-race child, my father was very angry. After all, it was a disgrace to the family. He strictly ordered me to abort it, but I was stupid. What crime did the child commit? She smoked and sighed softly. In fact, everyone knows that Fukasaku likes me. He won't care. My father is his master. As long as there is an order, he will not refuse. But that would be too unfair to Fukasaku. As a result, because I didn't know what was good for me, I was kicked out of the family. After I broke contact with my family, I worked everywhere. I was in a difficult situation, but Fukasaku often came to help me. He never disliked me. It really made me ashamed. After she said this, she was silent for a long time. Then she shrugged self-deprecatingly. At some age, some things are missed. He is already the head chef of Suntu. His future is limitless. People like me will only drag him down. Fukasaku, who was already successful and famous, would only become a laughingstock in the eyes of others if he married a woman with a mixed-race child. Huaisha shook his head and comforted her. As long as you are willing, he won't care. I care. Through the candlelight, her eyes were calm and silent, like a stone. The last bit of dignity left whispered softly, I care. Then Huaisha did not speak again. He put away his self-righteous kindness and fulfilled the role of a guest. After drinking, he turned and went upstairs. Takahashi was already drunk. He cried and shouted nonsense. He staggered away. When Huaisha and others came down again, they could not see him. Only the calm landlady politely sent them out of the door. After walking far away, Huaisha looked back and saw the landlady standing behind the door. She picked up the bamboo pole, took down the lantern at the door, lowered her head, and blew it out. She turned back to the shop and closed the door. The lights inside gradually went out. It was closed. Chapter 7:10. Late at night, in the office. Draft for the protection of rights and interests of beastmen. Census of Dambwa Inner Circle. Survey of beastmen community in Ingzhou. History and key files of the Anesthetic Tracking Alliance. Under the cold light, confidential files were casually thrown on the table one after another, overlapping each other. Ai Qing closed her eyes and rubbed her swollen eyes. She felt the absurd nature of this country from the bottom of her heart. Ingzhou, which was known for its openness and multiculturalism, was actually the most conservative and xenophobic place in the world. Passers-by in a hurry would not have time to pay attention to the interior under the bright appearance in front of the colorful scenery. Instead, they would admire the open and civilized appearance. For the native people here, the country had never changed because of outsiders. Even the general, the ghost from America, could not change the deep-rooted concepts and thinking that had long been ingrained in the inheritance. It was true that Ingzhou, which suffered a heavy setback 70 years ago, could hardly be called a sovereign country now. It could not even have a violent institution like the army. The Ascender Institution, Looming Hall, and the Elite Force seat could only exist as a gathering place for the Chinese and the Emperor's guards. They could not appear in the meeting of the Central Bureau in the form of an official institution. Even the name of the Chinese had long been abolished, but that was only a nominal disappearance. In fact, everyone knew what was going on. The high officials and dukes of the past just continued to rule the country in a different way. They chose one tool after another and pushed it to the front to bear the anger from the people on their behalf. And they themselves hid behind the scenes through the overlapping of shares. They continued to be rooted in this land with a pervasive and terrifying influence. All kinds of accumulated abuses led to a completely different situation here from other countries. Under the intentional or unintentional indulgence of all parties, all kinds of bizarre and barbaric growth occurred. In addition to the peace and tranquility on the surface, all the places where the sun could not find were filled with demons. It could be said that some places would become a literal no-go zone once it was dark. According to the statistics of the Astronomical Association, more than 30% of the border smugglers came from the borders of Yingzhou. At the same time, this chaos and indulgence also brought a lot of wealth to Yingzhou and even led to investment and various peripheral industries. With the large border extending from Kyoto, Yokosuka as the axis, Yingzhou formed the largest border hub in the entire Asia. It was also the largest border material circulation channel in the present state. At the same time, it also became one of the main gathering places for beastmen in the entire territory. Edo, Osaka, and even the capital had moldy spots like the Dambwa inner circle that many important people despised. Hybrids who couldn't obtain a proper position under the sun would throw themselves into the darkness and exist in every corner of this class. The main body was the Extreme Tao Alliance, which was formed by 5 mixed-race large guilds and societies under the initiative of the 5 big bosses. Their influence covered almost every aspect of the mixed races' lives. A Yingzhou beastman had been dealing with them since he was born, from unlicensed hospitals and unlicensed doctors to education, catering, pharmaceuticals, and even work. Strictly speaking, there was not much of a strict subordinate relationship between Green Sun and the 5 big bosses. The two sides were more similar to a deep alliance. Green Sun needed the influence of the present state, and the 5 big bosses also needed the support of Green Sun's strength. Everyone knew that the other party was their important arm, indispensable and irreplaceable, so they could only continue to exist as one. In the end, this behemoth called the Anesthetic Pursuit Alliance was formed, together with the Russian Federation's K-Party, the Six Directions Society, the Heavenly Fool Company, the Iron King Party, the Illumination Cult, and other organizations. They formed the underworld of Yingzhou, a cruel system unique to the lawless zone. Not only were the mixed races planning a riot, but now the secret struggle in Kyoto was getting more and more intense. If the source of all this turmoil was traced back, it would be more and more unbelievable. The root cause was the proposed consumption tax increase, proposed by the Legislative Court of Yingzhou 2 months ago. When the population growth index was decreasing year after year, the society was aging, the huge gap in pension reserves, and the prevalence of low consumerism, the continuous attacks had made the entire social system, which was glued together by harsh order suppression and a high welfare system, in danger. In short, the government was out of money. In order to maintain the existence of the welfare system, the tax increase was necessary. Even if it was to quench their thirst, they couldn't care less. The industries affected would involve the entire society: oil, electricity, transportation, agriculture. Everything that could be produced and consumed would be reevaluated. 2 months ago, when this proposal was proposed, it had already caused an uproar. Because of this, the struggle became worse and worse. In the end, it had become another competition between the Wu family and the Gong family. As the central government, there was such a natural contradiction between the Gong family and the Wu family, who secretly divided the local areas. The giant enterprises and societies added fuel to the fire, and the oppression and discrimination against the mixed races became more and more intense. If left alone, the riot of the mixed races would most likely cause a large number of hidden contradictions to explode. Then, due to the chaos and uncontrolled destruction, they would be resisted and counterattacked by the entire Yingzhou. After everyone worked together to kill the mixed races, the social contradictions and hatred of the people would be transferred to them. They would get rid of the blame on their heads and they would get a real benefit. It could be said that the benefits were endless. As for the death of a few mixed races, it was not a big deal. In this case, it was easy to understand the strange and indifferent attitude of both sides on this matter. Make a fuss, the bigger the better. Everything was just a carnival before the banquet began. Who knew how many people were rubbing their hands and could not wait? If this riot could not be resolved, and the future of the God City and the technology he had mastered were completely destroyed, the inner circle of Dombo County would become hell. Just as AI Ching was thinking, a sharp sound suddenly came from the quiet office. A short and loud alarm. It came from a fist-sized object that looked like a counter beside her hand. In an instant, the number on the flipping page sign had changed from 0 to 1. AI Ching's expression froze for a moment. She could not believe it. In such a short time, the beacon had been activated once. Soon, the phone from the decision-making room rang. The news from the higher-ups of the central government confirmed her conjecture and confirmed the bad news. Yes, I know. I am looking for clues. Yes, I will speed it up. Don't worry. I know. I will not let the resources of the building be used up. AI Ching nodded. She suppressed her anxiety and responded calmly. Only after hanging up the phone did she let out a long sigh. It seems that there is not much time left. She flipped open the irrelevant files on the screen and looked at the confidential information at the bottom, the familiar face in the photo. She felt unhappy from the bottom of her heart. Where did this bastard go? At the same time, Huaishur also woke up from his dream. There was no warning, no reason at all. For some reason, he felt a strange sense of peace in his heart. But after thinking carefully for a long time, he could not understand. He stared at the yellowed poster on the ceiling and quickly turned over to go back to sleep. Yes, in the snores of his roommates and the smell of their feet. At least tomorrow, I will go out and find a real place to live. Anyway, I will have to hand in the stolen money if I can't spend it all. I might as well get a better one. At the same time, in the capital late at night, at the scene of the fire outside Dombo district, the sirens of the fire engine dissipated into the night. Pillars of water rose into the sky, extinguishing the last wisp of fire in the ruins, and also poured on the young man's heart. Cold. Yuan Zhao, who had originally jumped out of the car with his trident and was about to go all out, gradually became disordered in the wind. The quiet night wind blew, bringing with it the mocking screams of the crows in the distance. There was no expectation of fighting 300 rounds with a strong enemy. There were also no underlings kowtowing. There was also no soul-stirring brave charge into the tiger demon's den, a fierce battle between dragons and tigers. Not to mention, there was no fantasy of a mixed-race little sister praising brother Yuan Zhao for being so powerful his mission target, along with the entire house, had long been burned to ashes. Hello, big sister Yi? There is definitely a problem with your divination. Yuan Zhao answered the phone with tears in his eyes. It's not that I don't want to work. Can't we do some missions in the world of the living? Don't talk about that Russian Federation guy. This damned place has already been burned to ashes. There are no clues at all. On the other side of the phone, Yi Shuya was silent for a long time. She once again lowered her head to look at the astrolabe in front of her. Her eyebrows slightly raised. The stars above the capital actually broke without any warning? Perhaps her observation was wrong, but what if it was not? No matter what method was used, it showed that the capital's muddy waters were deeper than she had imagined. As expected, the job that Xian Niao threw over was not so easy to accept. She pinched her eyebrows, and her heart became heavy. Come back first, Yuan Zhao. Have a good sleep before daybreak. Yi Shuya smiled. Didn't you always complain that you haven't seen any famous places in Yingzhou? This time, I'll satisfy you. Hey, what do you want to do now? Yuan, Zhao suddenly felt a little scared. Nothing. Tomorrow we'll go see the general. Before hanging up the phone, Yishuya thoughtfully reminded him, remember to wear formal clothes. The next day at 8 o'clock in the morning, Huaisher, who was awakened by the sound of knocking on the door, saw that there were more than 40 missed calls on his phone before he could even go out to rent a room. All of them were from the higher-ups of the Fujimoto group. There were also a lot of messages and irritable urging, all of which were asking him to immediately call back or quickly contact them. In the end, he turned on the Do Not Disturb mode before going to bed yesterday, and did not receive a single one. When the door opened, he saw the ashen-faced Shan, Xia, standing outside the door. "What are you doing? Why didn't you pick up your phone?" Huaisher awkwardly turned his head to look at the phone. "It got a heat stroke. Cough, cough, it's out of battery." "What are you doing, you scoundrel?" Shan Xia reached out and pulled him out by the collar. "There's no time. Hurry up and leave. Hurry up." "What the hell?" Huaisher looked at him as if the sky had fallen and could not understand. "Could it be that the Metropolitan Police Department has come to arrest us?" Shan Xia turned his head and coldly glared at him. He lowered his voice. "Boss Fujimoto, I can't hold on much longer." Chapter 7:11. To be precise, it was Fujimoto who was dying. Everyone was familiar with Fujimoto, but what exactly was going on with Fujimoto's dying? Let Huaisher explain it to everyone. Fujimoto was dying. Actually, it was Fujimoto who was dying. Then why was Fujimoto dying? Everyone might be very surprised. How could Fujimoto die? But that was the truth. Huaisher was also very surprised. Then this was the matter of Fujimoto dying. Did everyone feel that it was very strange. Huaisher also felt that it was very strange, because along the way, he had asked everyone for a long time. Everyone said the same thing, but no one could figure it out. Everyone welcomed him to discuss it with them in the comments section. What was there to discuss? Talk about the same thing? Huaisher felt very uncomfortable. It was not until they arrived outside the hospital's emergency room that someone obtained the surveillance footage from the Metropolitan Police Department. It was probably early in the morning. Fujimoto wore a mask and came out of a private house. After seeing that there was no one around, he got into his van that was covered with inharmonious spray paint. Why is he acting so sneakily like a thief? Huaisher asked subconsciously. Immediately, everyone turned to look at her. Little brother, do you know how to talk? Big brother was sneaking around. How could that be called sneaking around? However, the others were immediately curious. The houses in the video were built one by one, and Fujimoto's house was in a high-end apartment building. It was obviously not his own house. Immediately, they became suspicious. Should we investigate? Someone asked. Cough, cough. At the foot of the mountain coughed hard twice, looked elsewhere, and said in a low voice, Big brother has a woman outside. Don't talk nonsense. Sister-in-law is very strict. All right, so it turned out that he was going out to play with a mistress. But the problem was that he had already changed his clothes and wore sunglasses. Couldn't he have changed his car? Huaisher felt a headache. He probably drove straight to the door after drinking last night. He didn't even notice that he was driving such a flashy official car. In the end, he suffered retribution. Just after crossing the intersection, there was a car accident. Or rather, it was a premeditated collision. A truck directly rushed over from the side and slammed the van that was waiting in front of the traffic light against the wall. Then, he quickly reversed the car and hit it again. Finally, the driver with a mask jumped out of the car and checked the scene. He was shocked when he saw that Fujimoto was still able to climb out of the car basket. But after looking left and right and discovering that there was no one around, he actually took out a knife from his bosom, rushed forward, and ruthlessly stabbed a few times, then turned around and fled. Bastard. Seeing this, how could the Fujimoto Gumi's cadres not understand that this was a deliberate assassination by the enemy? Unfortunately, the one who did it was an ordinary person who didn't know anything. He didn't know that he was a mixed breed. Although the blood of ghosts often made people violent, it also stimulated the glands to secrete a large amount of hormones that exceeded that of ordinary people. Even though he had been stabbed twice in the chest, stomach, and heart, he was still able to hold on until the passers-by called the police, and the ambulance arrived. Revenge! We must avenge our boss. His brother, who was also the leader of the thugs, Shanya, immediately blushed and started roaring in the corridor of the hospital regardless of where he was. He kicked over the trash can next to him and roared, Where is everyone? Where the hell did everyone go? Come with me. Calm down, Shanya. Yamashita said coldly, You don't even know who the other party is. What's the use of getting angry? Finger. Huaisher, who was beside him, reminded him. He was new here, so he wasn't as rash as the others. He was staring at the screen of his cell phone. After everyone looked over, he pointed at the replay in the surveillance video. This person, the way he holds the knife is very strange. Although he's wearing gloves, his little finger should be missing. If it's not a mistake in operating the machine, it should only be extreme Tao, right? There's also something wrong with the way he walks. His right leg should have been broken before. There's even a steel plate. He should have just removed the stone. Before he finished speaking, he saw that Shanya's eyes were burning red. It must be the Tiger King team. That bastard Arasaka Tomoya. I want his life. Clang. The nurse who pushed open the door and walked out of the ward was shocked. The information board in her hand fell to the ground. Looking at the group of people with scars on their faces, she trembled and couldn't say a word. The patient said, she stuttered, wants to see his family. May I know who is Mr. Fujimoto's? Before she finished speaking, she was pushed aside by Yamashita. The group of people finally walked into the ward. They saw the serious face of the attending doctor. The patient is about to die. Everyone, be mentally prepared. What are you talking about? Bastard! Yamashita was instantly furious. She rushed forward with her eyes wide open and grabbed the doctor's collar. Are you cursing my big brother? Yamashita! Yamashita! A weak voice came from the hospital bed. Through the oxygen mask, Fujimoto widened his eyes and said with all his might, Yamashita, how humiliating are you going to be? It was hard to imagine that a dying person could still speak in such a sharp tone. After speaking, Fujimoto's mouth and nose were filled with blood vessels. His body convulsed violently. The life support machine let out a sharp sound. Even if he was a mixed breed, after being seriously injured by a car and stabbed in the vitals, it was already a miracle that he could survive until now. Anyone who saw that pale face would know that Fujimoto did not have long to live. Big brother, I'm sorry, big brother. Yamashita's eyes reddened when she heard this, and she knelt in front of the bed. The others gathered around, not daring to say a word. Fujimoto was obviously making arrangements for his death. On his deathbed, the man reached out and held Yamashita's hand with great difficulty. No, don't take revenge. This is retribution, my retribution. I was too arrogant to be involved in the private affairs of the 5 bigwigs. He panted violently. His forehead was flushed red, and the 3 ghost horns on his head were so scarlet that they were about to drip blood. But what was incredible was that his eyes lit up, and he was excited. It was terminal lucidity. He grabbed Yamashita's hand tightly and stared at him with great difficulty. Yamashita, you're my sworn brother. I'm most at ease with your character. In the future, you must not act on your own initiative. I will. I definitely will. Yamashita nodded repeatedly and sobbed, Please don't worry, big brother. I'll definitely bring the Fujimoto Gumi to greater heights. I won't let you down. Very good, very good. Fujimoto heaved a sigh of relief, and blood began to flow from his oxygen mask. In the future, the Fujimoto Gumi, the position of president of the Fujimoto Gumi, will be handed over to Huaishiki. Dead silence came out of nowhere. Everyone in the ward froze in place. Nobody said a word. The only sound that could be heard was the monotonous sound of the machine alarm. They turned back in disbelief and looked at the man who was secretly stealing bananas from the fruit basket. Huaishur was dumbfounded. He was in a terrible state. He didn't even have time to throw away the banana peel in his hand. He looked at Fujimoto blankly. Big brother, are you out of your mind? Do you have to drag your crotch when you're saying your last words? Yamashita is pronounced Yamashita, not Kaishur. Is this the incompetence of your physical education teacher or the decline of your Mandarin teacher? I've only just joined your organization, so don't spout nonsense, all right? Be big brother, what did you say? No, did you hear me clearly? Fujimoto panted heavily. I said, in the future, Huaishiki will be the leader of the Fujimoto Gumi. The Fujimoto Gumi will be renamed to Huaishiki. Didn't you hear me? Are you going to go against my wishes? On the hospital bed, the man who was covered in blood raised his head and stared at their faces. His dark pupils were almost constricted into a small dot, and he looked very gloomy. Be big brother. This Huaishiki is still too young. Wakanaka Takazawa of the Fujimoto Gumi said, Why don't we? Fujimoto closed his eyes tiredly and patted Yamashita's hand. Bang! A loud sound rang out like an iron hammer, striking everyone's hearts. Yamashita turned around, pulled out the pistol in his pocket, and aimed it at Takazawa's face. Before the blank face could react, he pulled the trigger. In an instant, blood splattered everywhere, and Takazawa fell on his back. Everyone was stunned, including Huaishir. Yamashita was expressionless. He only lowered his raised arm, ignoring the blood stains on the cuffs of his suit. Boss's meaning is very clear. The skinny middle-aged man looked around at everyone's faces. Who agrees? Who objects? Huaishir wanted to say that he objected. However, when he looked at the gun in Yamashita's hand and his red eyes, he wisely swallowed his saliva and did not say anything. Then, the matter of the second generation of the Fujimoto Gumi taking over the position of Huaishiki quickly received everyone's unanimous approval and love. It was passed on the spot. Soon, under Fujimoto's signal, everyone left. Only the dying Fujimoto, Huaishir, and Takazawa's body on the ground were left in the ward. Fujimoto raised his hand with difficulty and pointed at his personal belongings beside him. The password of the phone is 663s. After I die, contact Green Sun. Fujimoto said hoarsely, "They will definitely help you." Huaishir was in a bad mood. He was looked at with eyes full of pleading and expectation. He suddenly became the second generation of the Extreme Do organization, and he was even a filmmaker. He couldn't react at all. "Don't, big brother. Can't you change to someone else?" He looked around, lowered his voice, and said in a low voice, I'm a spy. I really didn't want to do this." Fujimoto was not surprised. He was not even angry. I know, I guessed it, but I didn't say it." No one said it. Under the blood-stained oxygen mask, the corner of Fujimoto's mouth twitched, as if he was smiling proudly. "Huaishiki, how can there be a man who doesn't want to be an actor? Stop talking nonsense. Big brother, we're talking about spies." Huaishir's eyes widened. He felt more and more confused. He couldn't figure out where he had exposed himself. "Are you an idiot?" Fujimoto shook his head slightly and looked at the face in front of him. He sighed tiredly, because there's no hatred in your eyes. He had already vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the person introduced by Tanaka. When Huaishir mentioned Green Sun, he already more or less understood. He clearly felt that this guy might be a spy, but unexpectedly, he couldn't hate him at all. The people of Green Sun didn't notice, but he saw it. Huaishir, who walked out of Aisha's house at that time, lowered his head to hide the expression that was about to cry. "Please, Lord Huai Jijun, please." He held Huaishir's hand tightly and used all his strength to repeat over and over again, "Please, everyone, I'll leave it to you." Huaishir was sluggish. He felt the hand holding him lose strength bit by bit. Finally, in the sharp sound of the electrocardiogram losing its fluctuation, Fujimoto lost his last breath. Only the gradually dimming empty eyes reflected the young man in front of him, until Huaishir lowered his head and nodded vigorously. "Don't worry," he promised in a low voice. "I'll save you. I definitely will." No one responded. Only the last trace of consciousness passed away in satisfaction, never to return. Chapter 7:12. In the hospital, in the quiet corridor, everyone was silent and did not speak. When the news of Fujimoto's impending death weighed heavily on everyone's heads, the original grace and calmness disappeared without a trace. There was no doubt that the change of leader was the most important thing for the unstable Fujimoto Gumi. They could not afford any more accidents. Originally, everyone was prepared for Yamashita to take over, but no one expected that the successor would not be Yamashita, who was the head, nor Ueno, nor Ojiwara, who was the head of the Fujimoto Gumi. Instead, it was Kaori Haim, who had only joined the gang for a day. Kaori Haim. The change was sudden. Regardless of whether everyone agreed or not. That's when Fujimoto had already made up his mind. What if the boss is dead? Before his death, Otaku asked, he used the prestige what if the new boss cultivated for so many years. What if the new team leader can't tolerate this reality? Then send him to prison. And those who did not accept it killed someone with already been personally executed. I have all the witnesses. No one was given time to react. Shansha lowered his head and glanced at the pistol in the inner pocket of his suit. Had died under the gun of his own brother. His expression became calm. Of course, everyone knew that he had some ulterior motives. I have no objection, but the decision at the foot of the mountain made everyone shudder. His coldness and decisiveness when he was stood alone in front of the window. They had gone through smoking with his back so many years to everyone. There was no need for more words, and no one could see his expression. The moment he sighed, his determination had been conveyed. His gaze moved between Yamashita when he pulled the trigger, the door of the ward, meant that Yamashita's expression team leader was after a long time destroyed. Ojiwara, it was not only a show of loyalty to the second generation adjusted his glasses, but also a fatal weakness. I have a question that I want to ask first. Was too powerful to control in the future, Yamashita, or if he wanted to make things difficult, and even my grandson is about to be born. This evidence doesn't want anything to happen to the Fujimoto Gumi. In a way, this might be the last care if you think that I'm in the way, sworn brother, then you might as well caused an extremely bad social impact. What the nonsense are you talking about? Not sentence criminals to death. Widen his eyes. But the Kyoto Association didn't Gaozei just die? The rules of the Kyoto Association were stricter than the law. Ojiwara, if Kinfen wanted Zifan to die, the survival of the gang depends on the leader and the tolerate. Yamashita. Everything can be sacrificed, Yamashita couldn't these two can't be shaken. Yamashita was already prepared. Even if it's your own people, at this time, you have to kill the most uneasy person was not Yamashita ruthlessly and decisively, but the most hot-tempered Ueno. If Gaozei Yamashita was Fujimoto's confidant, and a black the person he trusted the most to die in the entire group. Yamashita, for so many years, he was loyal. I have something to ask even if he told Yamashita Otaku to jump off a building immediately, what do you think of the position would not frown at all? He paused for a moment, was a civil servant coldly. 20 years ago, really accept a newcomer Fujimoto's boss joined the Fujimoto Gumi after he came out. A day to ride on your already semi-retired. At the foot of the mountain, he only managed the company turned around and assets and on looked the at him. His eyes were bloodshot, seemed to be stable as he stared at him. Whether he stayed looked or over left calmly was just in the silent exchange of second generation leader. Yamashita finally so many years and had earned enough money. I've said it very clearly. He would not do anything irrational. On the contrary, he was more concerned about whether the Fujimoto Group could continue to exist stably rather than being changed beyond recognition in the internal strife. Only Ueno was brainless. He had always been careless. What he did was also the work of a thug who licked blood from the tip of a knife. Now, Fujimoto's boss suddenly said that he would pass the position to a newcomer who had just joined the group. His brain did not react at all, and he did not know what to say. Gaozei could not see the situation clearly, or it could be said that he was blinded by the position of team leader. Seeing that Yamashita could not take the position, he relied on his relationship with Yoshida Kai to think about it. He deserved to die. Moreover, before this, Fujimoto had already announced at the high-level cocktail party that Kaisher had become an official member of Green Sunday. With Green Sun as an arm, the Fujimoto Group might be able to flourish in the future. However, no one knew what this new second-generation leader was thinking. Actually, everyone, there's no need to be so pessimistic. Ueno forced a smile and tried to lighten the mood. Although we're all heartless extreme Taoists, Brother Fujimoto has never harmed anyone in his life. He must have his reasons for choosing Waikiki, right? No one spoke or responded. After a short silence, the rapid heartbeat alarm could be heard through the door. In the end, it was silent. Everyone's faces gradually turned pale. Fujimoto was dead. Whether they were willing or not, the Fujimoto group would change in the future. But at the same time, sorrow and sadness emerged from the bottom of their hearts. In the silence, everyone looked at each other and waited for orders from the other side. Only Yamashita lowered her head, took a deep breath, rubbed her eyes, and took the lead to walk to the door. She raised her hand and knocked on the door. No one responded behind the door. After a long, long time, a low voice was heard. "Come in." In the room behind the door, the man on the hospital bed had already passed away. He was no longer breathing. The figure with his back facing them sat on the chair in front of the hospital bed, smoking quietly. Green smoke slowly rose from his fingertips and curled up into the sunlight shining in through the window. In the silence, he stared at the sunlight outside the window and did not speak. He was still dressed dispiritedly and casually, but for some reason he felt different from the past. He was different from the dazed young man just now. "Is everyone here?" The white figure in Kaishi's arms turned around. When his bangs were brushed up, his curved horns were exposed under the sunlight and were no longer hidden. His calm eyes swept across the crowd. After a long time, he nodded slightly. "If everyone is here, let's say goodbye to Mr. Fujimoto." He said, "You should all be grateful to him and remember his last kindness. You understand?" The owner of the pair of eyes told them as if he was reprimanding an ignorant child. After giving the judgment condescendingly, no one was allowed to refute it. "Yes, don't ask too many questions, and don't have to be suspicious. You just have to do as you are told." He was clearly a newcomer who had joined Extreme Tao on the second day, but his arrogant and fierce attitude made him seem like someone high above others. Being stared at by that pair of eyes, everyone couldn't help but shiver. But whether it was out of respect for the second generation's purpose or gratitude for Fujimoto's constant care, they had no reason to disobey. All of them bowed and respectfully said goodbye to the deceased on the hospital bed. No one spoke again until Kaisher finished his cigarette silently and put it out in the vase at the bedside. He turned his head and looked at the silent foot of the mountain. "Where's the pistol?" As he spoke, Huaisher stretched out his hand and beckoned to the foot of the mountain. He spread his fingers and waited. In the silent air, something tightened again. The foot of the mountain raised his head, and his expression twitched. He slowly raised his hand and pulled out the pistol from the holster in the inner pocket of his suit. His finger seemed to fall on the trigger for a moment, but soon he let go as if he had been electrocuted. He held the handle of the gun as if he was holding a hot iron. He stiffly handed it over. Huaisher raised his hand, grabbed the body of the gun, and took the pistol out of his hand. Then he looked at the pistol in his hand. There was no problem with it, and there were no signs of rust damage. It was well maintained. He took out a silk handkerchief and simply wiped the body of the pistol and the handle of the pistol. After carefully wiping away the irrelevant fingerprints, he held the handle and raised it before everyone could breathe a sigh of relief. He pulled the trigger. The high-pitched sound rang out again. Gao Zei's body on the ground twitched and stopped moving. "The pistol is not bad. It's a rare American product. Give it to me in the future." He raised his eyes and gave the order to the surprised man. Without waiting for his permission, he casually put the pistol into his pocket. Finally, he turned around and told everyone, "The Fujimoto Gumi, Wakazu Takazawa, wanted to disobey my orders and intended to rebel. I have already killed him with my own hands. Do you understand?" In the silence, everyone felt their hearts skip a beat when they were stared at by that pair of eyes. He couldn't help but bow down respectfully. Very good. This is a good start. No matter what, I hope that everyone can get along well in the future. Huaishur paused for a moment and turned back to look at the dead man on the hospital bed. After a long time, he looked away. Everyone, let's go and prepare for the funeral. He lowered his eyes and said softly, "We have to let Mr. Fujimoto leave in peace." Chapter 7:13. The funeral only lasted for 3 days, and the farewell ceremony was held on the 4th day. For an extreme Tao expert, a funeral was not a rare thing. Although the bad news came in a hurry, the funeral was still in order. During the funeral, Fujimoto's wife was dissatisfied with the ownership of Fujimoto's inheritance and came with their children to make a fuss. However, they left resentfully when they didn't see Huaishur. Other than that, there were only some distant relatives. Some didn't even show up. The funeral was for the deceased's relatives and friends, but the day of the farewell ceremony was the day that the colleagues came to visit. Under the drizzle of a cloudy day, the members of Fujimoto Group in mourning clothes stood in 2 rows in front of the door and bowed to the visitors. In the car that gradually stopped, Yamada Tihei looked at the scene outside and raised his eyebrows slightly. Aren't they making it look good? Fujimoto, that fellow, even chose to die at such a troublesome time. I heard that it was done by the Tiger King team. That's what they said, replied the subordinate. He opened the door for him and held up the umbrella. The old man under the umbrella held the collar of his feather weave and walked toward the main door. Yamashita, in front of the door, bent down and bowed 90 degrees. It's been a long journey. You've worked hard. It's just 2 cities. It's not hard at all. Yamada chuckled and looked down. Yamashita, I heard that the new team leader isn't you. I'm incompetent. I'm already lucky to have the position of team leader. Yamashita lowered his head and replied, I really don't dare to covet the position of team leader. Haha, I'm just kidding. Look at how scared you are. The old leader of the Yamada group waved his hand and looked around. His expression gradually became surprised. What's wrong? I'm here to offer my condolences. Your new team leader won't even show his face. Sorry for the lack of manners. Yamashita maintained a 90-degree bow and replied, Team leader has other matters to attend to. He'll be here in a while. Please bear with him. Bastard, how dare you make our leader wait? The subordinate holding the umbrella was furious. He reached out and pulled Yamashita's collar, shouting angrily, How disrespectful! Are you looking down on us? That's enough, Irene. After all, this is a funeral, and we are guests. Don't go overboard. Yamada Tihei patted his subordinate's arm and left Yamashita, who was bowing to him. He turned around and walked to the auditorium. After burning an incense stick, he looked at Fujimoto's face and sighed. Then he turned around and walked into the side room to rest. Many of his old acquaintances had already arrived. It was very lively inside. When they saw him enter, many people raised their hands to greet him. Aya, everyone's here. Long time no see. Yamada found a seat in the middle and sat down. He looked around and asked knowingly, Didn't the people from the Tiger King team come? If they dare to come, I'm afraid there will be a fight today, right? I don't think so. The old man with burn marks on his face raised his eyes and glanced at the door outside. I heard that the Tiger King unit has already invited the 5 big bosses to mediate in the past 2 days. In order to protect his youngest son, that fellow Yuzaka has really put in a lot of effort. Yamada, on the other hand, you're asking the obvious. You must know something, right? What do you mean? I'm just an old man. I've already washed my hands of this business. How can I get involved in these things? Yamada picked up his teacup and asked casually, As for the Fujimoto team, I heard from the children that they're going to change their name to Why Paper Group, right? Does anyone know them? I've been curious about the new team leader for a long time. There were a lot of rumors about the new team leader of Why Paper Ancestor. Some said that he was an expert from Green Sun. Some said that he was a killing god at the border, and so on. However, none of them were reliable. Some even said that he was a mixed breed who had just joined the Fujimoto team less than 2 days ago. There were really all kinds of ridiculous rumors. For a moment, no one knew what was going on in Tengmoto's head. They did not know what he was thinking before he died. However, everyone who came here experienced the new team leader's arrogance. From the beginning of the funeral until now, he hadn't shown his face at all. Even the few gangs that were originally close to him were now shut out. Their attitude also became distant and cold. Well, no matter what, he has to show his face. Won't we know when the time comes? Yamada smiled and drank his tea. He didn't say anything else. During the busy farewell ceremony, Yamashita Kuro, who was the concierge outside the door, finally found the time to grab the person beside him and ask anxiously, "Where's the team leader? Where did the team leader go?" "No, I'm not sure." The subordinate shook his head blankly. He said that he drove out with Brother Shanya in the morning. He hasn't returned yet. Yamashita didn't feel good. What the hell did he mean by going out in the morning? Could it be that Shanya brought him to inspect the customs industry? For a moment, Yamashita felt a chill in his heart. Just as he was about to speak, he noticed a car parked in front of the door and a person coming out of the car. He was stunned. Big sister, why are you here? It's my man's funeral. Can I come?" The haggard woman held a confused child in her hand and glared at Yamashita. "I want to see what that guy called Why Paper is doing." However, someone else came out of the car behind her. An old man in a black suit with a walking stick in his hand greeted Yamashita warmly. "Isn't this Yamashita? Long time no see. How have you been?" Yamashita was stunned for a long time. He subconsciously steadied himself and bowed to the visitor. "Excuse me for not going out to meet you, Mr. Baiyuan." His heart had already sunk to the bottom. The visitor was a senior member of the Anesthetic Hunting Alliance, an envoy who could represent the opinions of the 5 big bosses. Now that he had come together with Fujimoto's widow, he probably didn't have good intentions. "Let's not waste time. I'm here today mainly for 3 things." Baiyuan took off his hat and looked around calmly. He told him, "Firstly, I'm here to offer my condolences to Mr. Fujimoto on behalf of our old master. Secondly, I'm here to mediate the matter between the Fujimoto group and the Tiger King group. Lastly, it's about Mrs. Fujimoto seeking justice from us." At the foot of the mountain, Lord Sheng Tianmu was furious after hearing about what happened to Mrs. Fujimoto. He instructed me to deal with it as soon as possible. "I'm afraid I won't be able to save you any face." Amidst the cold rain, Yamashita was already drenched in sweat. He lowered his head and pleaded, "Please come in for a detailed discussion." After watching the group enter, he glared at Otakama anxiously and gestured for him to think of a solution quickly. He couldn't be bothered with his work as a concierge anymore. He turned around and followed them in a sorry state. "What's the matter? Isn't your new team leader here?" After offering incense in the morning hall, Baiyuan looked around, and his expression quickly turned cold. Is this his attitude towards the 5 big bosses? "I'm very sorry. The team leader is on his way. Please bear with him." Yamashita could only bow again and beg sincerely. "Fujimoto, no. Why Chi Group will definitely give you an explanation regarding this matter. Please be magnanimous. Yamashita, is this the place for you to speak?" Baiyuan raised his voice and rebuked angrily. How arrogant is Huai Qi that he can't even meet people from his alliance? Or is it that he's still holding on to the hope that he can take over the foundation left behind by Fujimoto? Yamashita kept bowing, and sweat dripped onto the ground. To be honest, it was Mr. Fujimoto's last wish to have Huai Qi inherit the team leader's position. We've been asking to meet the 5 big bosses for days, but do you mean that this is the fault of the 5 big bosses? Beiyuan looked at him coldly. I don't mean that. It's just that, Yamashita explained in a panic, but Beiyuan waved his hand disinterestedly. Enough. The alliance has already decided to mediate the dispute between the Fujimoto group and the Tiger King group. Let's offer this in front of Fujimoto's memorial tablet. As he spoke, he took out a box from his pocket and threw it into Yamashita's arms. The box opened. Inside was actually a pinky finger that had already started to turn black with the end tied by a rubber band. Yamashita's hand trembled, and he looked up in disbelief. What does this mean? This is the Tiger King group's sincerity. As the saying goes, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Since Mrs. Fujimoto is willing to be magnanimous and forgive that child Yuzaka's unintentional mistake to resolve this grudge, the alliance is also happy to see this happen. This is also an apology to the Fujimoto group. Yamashita held the box in his hand and looked at Beiyuan in shock, as well as Mrs. Fujimoto behind him, who was avoiding his gaze. His face turned green and red. His lips trembled, and he could no longer speak. What's wrong? Beiyuan asked coldly, is the Fujimoto group unwilling to accept the verdict of the 5 big bosses? Or do you have other opinions? Yamashita gritted his teeth and didn't speak. He stood where he was and didn't move. His hands trembled as he held the box, unwilling to accept it. Once that pinky finger was placed in front of Fujimoto's memorial tablet, there would probably be no day for him to take revenge. They even chopped off a finger. How terrible, how cruel. If they really want to offer condolences, even bringing a pig's head would be better than this. The young man under the umbrella outside the door sighed, helplessly. The hem of his jacket was still dripping with rainwater. He stepped into the morning hall with 2 plastic bags in his hands. When he looked up and smiled, his smile was handsome and evil. The horns on his forehead curved, like the evil demon in the ukiyo-e painting. Thank you for your hard work, Yamashita. Help me hold this. He casually put the plastic bags in his hands into Yamashita's arms and sighed. Kyoto is so big, but it's really difficult to find a place to buy tributes. Help me set it up in the morning hall. As for the finger, forget about it. He tossed the box, ignoring Beiyuan's ugly expression, and casually threw it out of the morning hall. Isn't it a little too shabby to set up a finger? Didn't the 5 big bosses send some virgin boys and girls over? Impudent person. Beiyuan was furious. His face was ashen, but when he noticed the respectful attitude of the people around him, he immediately understood the identity of the visitor. His eyes changed and quickly became gloomy. Are you going to reject the mediation of the 5 big bosses? Huaisher was stunned for a moment. Then he scratched his head in confusion. Why didn't you say so earlier? Yamashita, who was holding the plastic bags, suddenly exclaimed. His hands trembled, and 2 bloody, round things fell out of the plastic bags. In the silence, 2 heads fell to the ground with low sounds. They rolled around mischievously, showing the last remnants of fear and despair on their faces. Under everyone's stunned gazes, the person who had arrived late casually took off his wet clothes, revealing his naked upper body, hideous tattoos, as well as crisscrossing wounds and bloodstains between the gunshot wounds, knife wounds, and burn wounds. The evil spirit carrying the bronze bell grinned, revealing a hideous smile at the mortal world from his back. Huaisher sighed and shrugged, helplessly. After all, the Tiger King team is already gone. Chapter 714. 2 hours ago, Why sure heard the sound of glass shattering outside the car window. Is it raining? He looked up and asked. Yes, but it's not heavy. Shangya, who was driving, replied. We'll be there in a while. Boss, you can sleep a little longer. I've slept enough. You have a cigarette? Yes, please have one. Shangya hurriedly stopped the car by the side of the road, ignoring the cars behind him honking furiously on the narrow one-way street. He turned around and took out his cigarette, offering it with both hands. Then he respectfully lit it for Why sure. I say, Shangya. Why sure looked at him and couldn't help but ask, Have you never doubted me? Shangya, who was in the driver's seat, turned around again. Boss, what did you say? I mean, you've worked hard for so many years, but you've been riding on your head by a brat like me. You even have to treat someone like this as your family. It must be uncomfortable, right? Why sure asked calmly. Everyone else is obviously unhappy, but why haven't you objected at all? You're even so respectful. To be honest, I've already prepared to prove myself, but you didn't doubt me at all. If you want to say. Shangya, who was driving, rubbed his bald head and smiled embarrassedly. The scar on his face also curved into an arc. Maybe it's because I'm not good at thinking. Since I was young, my reaction has always been half a beat slower than others. I couldn't understand what the teachers taught me. My mother always thought that there was something wrong with me. Maybe there really is something wrong with me, but there's no cure for stupidity. Growing up, the only good thing about me is that I'm a little stronger, slow to react, and not too afraid of pain. So my mother always told me that it's okay to be a little stupid as long as I listen to what others say. As long as I listen to the right people, I can live better than those who use their brains. Shangye replied as he drove, "If it weren't for Brother Fujimoto, I might have been sold to an illegal factory to work and beaten to death, right? Brother Fujimoto has never harmed me, and he's very righteous, promoting me to this extent. I think that the person Brother Fujimoto chose wouldn't harm me. Ahahaha, I accidentally said something stupid. Brother, why sure, please don't take offense." As he spoke, he laughed to himself. Its sharp teeth were like those of a shark. How naive. Why sure sighed. Haven't you thought about changing your profession? That won't do. Brother Huaiji, we don't even have a proper driver's license and household registration. Even if he worked at a convenience store, his hourly wage would be reduced to less than half of other people's once they saw that he was a mixed race. He wouldn't be able to survive. Someone as good-looking as you, Boss Huaiji, might be able to make a lot of money, but we can't. Ueno scratched his head and said the truth without knowing how to flatter. Only extreme Tao wouldn't despise us. You see, it's fine as long as we can fight. To tell you the truth, I'm super resistant to beatings. In the past, several people tried to stab me, but I beat them all up. Huaisher shook his head helplessly. He sighed and pinched the space between his eyebrows. Shangye, do you know what extreme Tao is in my opinion? Huh. Shangye was confused and wanted to turn around, but there was a crossroad in front of him, so he could only listen carefully. Then he heard the calm voice of the paper effigy in his arms. All extreme Tao, the so-called chivalrous people, are actually like rats. Huaisher looked at the world outside the window that was submerged in the rain and sighed softly. It doesn't matter if you're forced by others or if you're willing to fall into depravity, no matter what reason you have for choosing this way of life. It can only mean one thing. You can't survive in the outside world. But the world outside the sun isn't beautiful either. It's like the ocean, turbulent and bottomless. We can only lie on the small plank under our paws, unable to see the light. You can be chivalrous and indulge, or you can bully and fish as you please. But if you want to live a better life, you have to band together to survive. You have to contribute your small plank to form a big boat to keep the group warm. If there's a hole in the boat, it has to be repaired. If someone wants to be a black sheep, they have to stand up and get rid of him. If the boat sinks, all the rats are doomed. If other rats' boats block your way, you have to crush them. This has nothing to do with morality and justice. You don't have to think about it, but you have to know what you're doing. You should also know where you are. When the car stopped in front of the huge manor of the Tiger King team, Huaisher stood outside the car, lowered his head, and put out the cigarette in his hand. When he turned around and saw Shangye, who was still in a daze, he suddenly couldn't help but laugh. "Now we're going to crush the other boat. Shangye." He reached out and asked softly, "Do you want to come along?" Shangye was stunned. Was that moment just an illusion or an illusion? It was indescribable. A cold, damp breeze blew in from outside the window. It was like a raging storm, pouring into the car amidst the roar of the surging waves. The loud noise of the raging waves almost crushed him, but amidst the roar, a solemn and majestic silhouette emerged from the storm, tearing the hurricane apart and crashing through the waves. It was an unbelievably huge steel battleship patrolling between the sky and the sea. It was insufferably arrogant, standing proudly at the top of this tyrannical world. It was summoning him. Should he come? Was there a need to hesitate? Shangye gave up thinking. He just instinctively raised his hand and held that palm tightly. He pleaded from the bottom of his heart, "Please take me with you. Please let me come with you." Sure. Amidst the drifting rain, the man smiled. "Then follow me." Just like that, with Shangye in tow, The two of them walked towards the incoming behemoth. In the splashing rain, unexpectedly, Shanya didn't feel any uneasiness or fear. He felt extremely at ease, as if nothing was worth fearing anymore. Ignoring the rain falling into his eyes, he widened his eyes and stared at the back of that person. He witnessed him moving forward. He watched as he raised his fist and destroyed the insignificant iron gate. Then he stepped into the manor. Then, with a punch, he sent the person who rushed forward flying like a doll. With another punch, he caused another person to repeat the same mistake. More and more people rushed forward, and then more and more people were sent flying. Amidst the crisp sounds of bones breaking, the rain also trembled in horror. Everything that was insignificant was being brutally ravaged and crushed. If it was an enemy in front of him, he would crush them. If it was a wall in front of him, he would tear the wall apart. He walked straight forward, step by step. Amidst the wails, he walked deeper into the encirclement. Even bullets and gunpowder couldn't stop him. Some people were screaming monster. Some wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy. Some people fled in all directions, and some rushed towards him. When Shanya came back to his senses, he had already fallen in the messy hall. He tried his best to breathe. His body was covered with gunshot wounds, knife wounds, and bruises from the scuffle. But his body seemed to have a mind of its own. He contracted his arms tightly until the struggling opponent in his arms lost his strength and stopped moving. He won. In his exhaustion, he felt his vision darken. He lost too much blood and couldn't breathe. But when he looked up, he could still see the man standing beside him, looking down at him, waiting quietly. "Can you still stand up, Shanya?" he said, "just a little more. Don't give up." You were waiting for me." Shanya raised his head in disbelief and looked at the cold face that was dyed red with blood. So, that person laughed and nodded matter-of-factly. "Yes, because we agreed to do it together." How should he describe the ecstasy and honor at that moment, the happiness that almost made him cry, and the power that came with those words? Unprecedented power. "Sorry to have kept you waiting." Shanya raised his head and propped his body up. He forgot about his illness and weakness and followed that person again. Just like that, he broke through the last door and finally saw those pale faces. They no longer looked as arrogant as before. They seemed to be trembling in fear. You can't do this. The 5 bosses have already stopped." Arisaka Tetsuya covered the wound on his left hand and screamed, "Beiyuan, Mr. Beiyuan won't let you go." After a moment of silence, Shanya and the man beside him looked at each other and smiled mockingly at the same time. Then they raised the gun in their hands, aimed at the front, and pulled the trigger. When the roaring stopped, Shanya slowly walked forward and looked down at those faces that were still in disbelief even when they were about to die. He grinned and spat. "Beiyuan, he's nothing. We actually respect you a lot too, Mr. Beiyuan." At this moment, in the morning hall, the paper figurine in his arms shrugged helplessly. "But we really didn't know. To be honest, I didn't expect them to be so weak." Beiyuan's face was pale. He was about to scold him when he saw Huaisha raise his hand and push it forward casually. Boom! Along with a low, muffled sound, a hurricane appeared out of nowhere. Suffocating airwaves swept across and scraped past his face like a knife. His hat was blown away, and his mottled white hair danced in the wind. He lay on his scalp and didn't dare to move anymore. "There's not even a guy who can catch my push. The Tiger King team is really not that good." Huaisha smiled and explained to the emissary of the 5 big bosses. "Besides, this isn't our fault, right?" Beiyuan's face twitched. What do you mean? What I mean is what I mean." Huaisha sighed. We're all small characters who can only continue to exist because of the alliance. If this is what the 5 big bosses want, how can we dare to disobey? But why didn't you say something so important earlier? He asked doubtfully. Shouldn't the 5 big bosses' judgment be delivered soon? It's already past 5 in the afternoon. Even if they came after work, they didn't have to come so early, right? Mr. Bayuan, why didn't you come an hour earlier or give them a call? As he spoke, the blood-stained man took a step forward and scrutinized that angry face. He asked word by word, "Or is it because of you that you were delayed on the road for too long?" "How dare you?" Bayuan roared and retorted hoarsely. "Are you going to say that this is my fault?" "What else?" Huaishur retorted indifferently. He raised his finger and poked the old man's chest. He told him word by word the destruction of the Tiger King team, the death of more than 70 people, including Tetsuya Sakaka and his son, and all the losses caused. All of these, of course, are your fault. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.